5:39. Let's get a check of the roads in the Team Hochberg Traffic Center. Kennedy inbound already jamming up Lawrence to Montrose, 22 in from O'Hare to downtown. Dan Ryan Express lanes, touch of the brakes inbound between 33rd and the Stevenson Expressway. And again, a construction update for you, 8094 Northwest Indiana. The westbound on-ramp from Kennedy Avenue now shut down until the end of June. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast in our QC Kinetics Weather Center. Cloudy, windy, cooler, high 65. Partly cloudy and 48 overnight. 67 right now. Next news coming up at 6. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
From the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We're talking about the Downers Grove Library Board. Oh, sounds rather parochial. Well,
it's anymore.
It's a small thing that represents a big thing. Like these other small fights in a particular community that are representative of the battles going on in every community, to the extent that people of good sense and common decency choose to engage in the battle for the future of their community, their state, and their country. This is another case. Josh McBroom over Naperville, when he proposed the idea of looking at a sign-up list for Naperville residents who want to receive and bring migrants into their homes, and the furor that stirred in Naperville.
Greatest idea ever.
And, you know, these things like library districts, as anybody who pays attention knows, become little fiefdoms, too, and in some cases not so little. I mean, in Lombard, we brought you this story last year. People forget. A couple candidates ran for library board in Lombard on the basis of this, in opposition to it, as an illustration of what's wrong with the library board, why they need change. And, of course, Lombard voters summarily rejected that because Lombard is gone, too, as is Downers Grove, as is Naperville. The Lombard Library Board built a 50,000 square feet, $28 million library. It's the most expensive library in DuPage County, maybe in...
I think in the Midwest, maybe even the world.
I mean, $554 a square foot. It also includes custom marble. I hope they got the Italian stuff, the good stuff for Lombard.
I mean, if you're going to go big, you know, go heavy or go home.
So, I mean, this does have some relevance here, even if you don't live in Downers Grove. And as you listen to what the residents said in trying to persuade the board, and with 4 of the 7 board members being Marxists, there was no persuasion path. That was baked in. And most of the residents who spoke understood that, as did the 3 trustees in the minority, or the 2 trustees and the mayor in the minority. So it's relevant to listen to these exchanges to understand the dynamics of the battles that are happening in your backyard, just as they are in D.C. They're not particularly different. But maybe it helps to crystallize it for some to hear it happening, you know, just on the block at the Village Hall. And by the way, Bill Nienberg, again, the library trustee who was removed last night. That's how the vote went, 4-3. Will join us at 6:06. So let's listen to the trustees, because he was removed, the referral by the library board to the village board accused him of misconduct, gross misconduct. Martin Tully is a former mayor, and he's on the board. He's a trustee. He's also an attorney. He picked up on that sort of threshold. To distill that a bit, give some context to that word and the charge against Nienberg. And, just sort of, and some of the residents who spoke did, just, sort of take up the issue of the norms of our free society, the small d democratic norms. Things like due process, evidence. Nienberg's statement referenced these things as well. Take a listen to Martin Tully.
Is that the terms misconduct and neglect of office, if you can look at various definitions, but it usually includes something like willful violation of a law, harming persons or property, or attending meetings under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So, okay, real high standard. But again, this isn't a court of law, so it's not a beyond the reasonable doubt. I'm not suggesting that everyone has to do that or we have to have evidence or witnesses, but just in my mind, I can't get away from that. That standard isn't even close to being met here. Not even close. I haven't heard one thing yet that comes even within a time zone of that standard. It's no surprise I've never been happy that this came before us in the first place. And again, I just said we don't have to consider the resolution, but there is a censorship resolution that the library put forward that has 3 points in it. Those 3 points, I've looked at it, I've read it, I've talked to people, I've read the documents, I've read the bylaws. They are at best specious and probably demonstrably false. They just are. Just read the documents, and that's not what they say. The misrepresenting position as a trustee is a stretch at best. I won't repeat what was said by Commissioner Glover, but the bylaws just don't say that. Even the language of the resolution has all kinds of wiggle room in it because it was written as though somebody wasn't quite sure it was going to fly. It just doesn't rise to that very high standard that I mentioned. And the third point is that Trustee Nienberg stated he refused to work with the other board members on any issue or policy after a motion that he put forward in January of 2024. I've done my own asking around and determined that's just not true. In fact, Bill Nienberg, Trustee Nienberg, has a history of working on other boards for this very village. He didn't just pop into the Downers Grove one day, show up on the library board. He worked in other boards and commissions very effectively. Now, other people who have worked with him on, say, the Economic Development Commission, for example, say that, yeah, he had some pretty strong opinions. But they were very valuable, and they contributed to an overall good solution for different issues. So this is not somebody that didn't have a history of working well with others. Sorry that this all happened here. That's unfortunate. But I just don't buy it. It's not misconduct or the neglect of office.
Yeah, not by any rational person's definition of those terms. He's not accused of embezzling funds or abusing staff or any of the other examples that Tully gave. This is real simple. He was obstreperous. What we would define is just he just disagreed, but he was disruptive. He was disruptive because you have 5 board members that are Marxists and Bill Nienberg, and he wasn't falling in line. And you're about to hear exactly that, and it doesn't take much reading between the lines to understand who the ringleader is and what the ringleader's philosophy is. And that ringleader's philosophy is the dominant philosophy in village government in Downers Grove and based on their elected representation in Downers Grove writ large. Leslie Sadowski-Fugit, if that's how you pronounce her hyphenated last name. I don't know about the Fugit. Fugit? Potato. She is a potato head. Leslie Sadowski-Fugit. She angry.
I will simply state that there is ample evidence to support that Trustee Nienberg has not acted in the best interests of the Downers Grove Public Library, and in some cases disparaged marginalized populations and minimized their harassment by board meeting attendees. He consistently comes to meetings of those which he attends unprepared. This goes against the bylaws and creates an unsafe work environment for staff and fellow trustees. Coaching and conversations have been offered from my understanding. In my case, after I was
Buddy
supposed to
bench.
meet with him and my daughter ended up sick, so I had to cancel a coffee because I had to stay home with her from school. Despite reaching out to reschedule that offer, I was never taken up on it again. I know I'm not the only one who had that happen, and due
All right, bring your kids into it. Okay.
So the buzzwords are all here, and there's more from Leslie Sadowski Fugit in just a second. Unsafe. He some way that's undefined, because of course there's nothing in what she said that is an explanation for a position. It's just a declaration, and this is what they do. He has disparaged marginalized communities. Could you be specific? No, I won't, because to get into the specifics, as she argued, would be to take up something in public that should be in executive session, because we're dealing with a personnel issue. Oh, of course, by the letters, Leslie Sadowski Fugit. She wouldn't want to invade Trustee Weinberg's privacy because she's so respectful. She's such a model of decorum and good governance. Of course. Thank you. You just essentially insinuate he's a racist in public. That's fine. No problem there. And he comes unprepared. I offered to coach him, but he failed to reschedule our coffee. Oh, my goodness.
And I have a kid at home when I had to stay home because she was sick.
And the unsafety of him allegedly coming to meetings unprepared. It's very interesting because on the one hand, he is not playing well with others on what they want to do, things like the drag queen bingo deal. On the other hand, he's unprepared. So he is pushing back again on the merits of some of the things the board did and wants to do. But on the other hand, he's unprepared. Okay. And here was the howler. And it wasn't lost on most in attendance.
I will simply state that there is ample evidence to support that Trustee This has nothing to do with political affiliations and everything
Please,
to
point of
deal
order. Come on, please,
with
folks, come on.
dangerous extremism.
Dangerous
that is
extremism.
taking hold not just here in Downers Grove or the western suburbs, but the entirety of the country. And I understand that may mean upsetting some of our base, but in reality, we need to be acting on behalf of the whole community's interests. In fact, I talk to my conservative neighbors, I'm sure everybody is shocked, all the time at the bus stop, walking around, about the library.
They love you.
And I haven't met one that for the life of them can understand why there is a contingent of people who do not patronize the library and yet have a lot of feelings about what it should and shouldn't be. While my neighbors may not have understood drag queen bingo, and they didn't, they recognized that it was an event that was for them. And they believe that it must have held values for some and simply chose not to attend. An event, I might add, and has been repeated here today, that Trustee Nienberg said was not the best of what we had to offer.
How dare he? How dare he say a self-described raunchy male stripper masquerading as a woman to gyrate in a scantily clad wear in front of kids? How dare he say that's not the best of us? Oh, my God. What an affront. It's also telling that, I understand, Trustee Leslie Sadowski Fugit. This is all about Drag Queen Story Hour. That's the tell. Misconduct and neglect of office. He was unprepared. He didn't do enough to represent or celebrate so-called marginalized communities in Downers Grove, right? And so on and so forth. Oh, but all of this is just the window dressing. You just targeted him for elimination because he didn't go along with drag queen bingo.
Right, that's what this is about. I don't think it's about the pronouns. I think it's about that. They just threw that in there.
Oh, sure,
to make him
right.
look bad and make disparaging comments about him.
Sure, yeah. Once you gotta build a facade around the real issue, and that's the real issue. It's pretty clear. All this marginalized communities, and I talk to my conservative friends, and sure, yeah, I'd love to hear If anybody knows Leslie Sadowski Fugit, this awful, angry white leftist female, this harridan, she's angry. I mean, it's all there bubbling just below the surface, and she uses all the buzzwords, the implicit biases. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a Jeremiad from an awful if you didn't get the lecture about how you're supposed to live your life. You know, like she does, practicing the golden rule. Another howler.
My request to everyone out there is to take some time to reflect on these behaviors, like yelling out at your, fellow residents. Are you treating others with the respect that you want to be treated? Have you had those one-on-one conversations with people that make you uncomfortable? Or do you simply show up to make inappropriate statements and leave before a meeting concludes? Don't attend other opportunities to engage in meaningful dialogue, and don't get back to people when they offer a coffee. While we as elected officials absolutely need to sit here quietly and let everyone say
won't
their
let that
piece as
go.
a First Amendment right, it does not mean that based on these very public statements that people will not face consequences for their actions. For example, breaking bylaws of institution. Throughout this process, I've been accused of lying about threats to the library. I've been called a thug, and I've also been called various other silly names. I signed up for this, and I can take it.
No, you
While
can't.
it's not right
Clearly,
for
you
even us
can't.
to have to face harassment, we chose to be public officials. Library staff, our LGBTQ plus community members, and others didn't sign up for this. So I will use the role that I have up here and the role that I have in appointing and removing board members to prioritize the safety of staff and other trustees and the sanctity of our public institutions, which is why I put this motion forward.
If only Bill Nienberg would have rescheduled that coffee
He could have saved his job. Why? I mean, my kid was
volunteer
sick.
post. Yeah.
I made an effort. I mean, these people are, it's insufferable. I mean, they're whiny politicians, and they claim that they can't work with someone who has opposing views. And to the point where they'll just get rid of them.
She is, to call her a liar and a bully is to be too generous. Or a goon, thug, whatever she was called. Whatever she was called and more is appropriate. She is a nasty, small-minded, ignorant, trollish, putty-faced goon. You want to talk about somebody that would be very comfortable in a guard tower. Leslie Sadowski Fugit. How dare you not reschedule that coffee?
She's making him pay for that.
You can say things. And the groaning when she said it's not political, right? Because I mean, people will roll their eyes or groan when you're standing above them with no clothes, declaring yourself the empress. Yeah. They're not going to take you seriously because you're not a serious person, and they shouldn't. And let me say something too about Mayor Barnett. I know he's trying to maintain civility and so on and so forth. He spent a lot of time doing what I hate, what I really despise politicians do. Hey! Don't applaud after somebody says we're trying to get through these things. You can express yourself however you want. Oh, hey, don't. Come on, people. We're having a conversation here. It's messy. It is messy. It is messy, Mayor.
When you brought it upon yourselves.
When somebody is going to insult my intelligence, I may call them out. We may have a visceral reaction as a group to things that are beyond absurd, uttered from our duly elected officials. So just holster all of your phony baloney civil discourse in protection of people that are in the business of trying to silence people with differing opinions, like this ghastly Leslie Sadowski Fugit. So I know, Mayor Barnett and Tully and Danny Glover, who's great in Lethal Weapon, those were the three who voted against removing Nienberg. So it's good that he did, and Barnett strikes me as a reasonable guy, but just spare us with the Model UN decorum rap, okay?
I mean, it's Downers Grove City Council.
Yeah, the adults at Downers Grove comported themselves fine. The statements that I saw, and I watched a good, 40 minutes of them, even a couple that were in support of the resolution, were well within the lines and mostly intelligent. So just stop lecturing people about how they're always to comport themselves and giving us the kindergarten version of how we're supposed to interact with one another. And there's these phony baloney hypocrites like Leslie Dusky Fugit wagging their finger and telling us about the golden rule. Spare me. Who the hell do you think you are? You shut up. I'm talking. Okay? And I'll show you whatever respect or lack of respect I feel is warranted in the moment as my temporary representative, Mayor, and others. All right. Coming up at 6:06, the man himself, Bill Nienberg, Downers Grove trustee of the library board, formerly 6:06.
But now let's head into the newsroom. Here's Mike Scott.
The new leader of Rainbow Push steps down. WIND Chicago News Times, 6 o'clock.
They've picked 7 jurors so far. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. They need 11 more to put former President Trump on trial in New York, charged with falsifying records over 2016 payments to keep an alleged affair quiet. But there's no court today. Fox's Brooke Singman reports.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg filed a motion to hold former President Trump in contempt, claiming he violated his gag order by posting to social media about Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, both of which are witnesses in this criminal trial. But Trump says Bragg should be focusing on violent criminals instead.
There are hundreds of murderers all over the city. They know who they are. They don't pick them up. They go after Trump.
He said that while campaigning after court in Harlem in a different part of the city, the Bronx. Masked gunmen on scooters shot at a group of men on a street corner, killing 1, wounding 3. Police investigating it as gang-related. Senators will be sworn in as jurors today after House Republicans delivered impeachment articles against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over record illegal immigration.
The House accuses him of breaking the law and violating the public's trust about the border. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer wants to finish the trial as soon as possible.
That's an abuse of the process. That is more chaos.
But most Republicans warn Democrats against short-circuiting the case without a final verdict.
Fox's Chad Pergam. Democrats could dismiss it, calling it a policy dispute. As House Republicans bicker, even threaten to oust Speaker Mike Johnson over a possible vote this week on additional military aid to Ukraine. Russia's gone on the attack again, killing at least 13 Ukrainians.
We're told 3 missiles struck near the center of Chernihiv. According to the city's acting mayor, the target was an 8-story building in a densely populated area. President Volodymyr Zelensky, in the aftermath, renewing his calls for the West to provide better air defenses. The holdup in Washington over an aid package has left Kyiv short of artillery, ammunition and vehicles.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. Former Senator Bob Graham has died, a Democrat who was also Florida's governor. In 2004, he ran for president. Graham was 87.
6:02 on AM 560. The Answer. Good morning. I'm Mike Scott. 67 degrees. And 3 men are wounded in a drive-by shooting in the Inglewood neighborhood. It happened overnight, according to Chicago police, who say a 51-year-old man was shot in the back of the head, transported to Mount Sinai Hospital in critical condition. Area 1 detectives say there is no one in custody. A Northwest Side alderman has filed a complaint against the head of the agency that oversees Chicago police after she spoke with many media outlets about the fatal shooting of Dexter Reed Jr. after he first shot at police. Alderman Nicholas Sposato sent a letter to the city's Office of the Inspector General criticizing Andrea Kirsten. Sposato writing, quote, "Her comments have led to a tainting of public opinion about the case and of the brave members of the Chicago Police Department," end quote. A woman is pleading guilty to murder in the brutal killing of a pregnant Chicago teen in 2019. Clarissa Figueroa entered that guilty plea yesterday, sentenced to 50 years. The family of the teen says it was time for justice in this case.
It's time for them to move forward. And again, there's nothing that's ever going to change the reality of the violent actions.
Figueroa and her daughter Desiree are accused of strangling 19-year-old Marlon Ochoa Lopez, then cutting her baby from her womb after luring her to their Southwest Side home with the promise of baby clothes. An Illinois state legislator this week is hoping to address the growing issue of squatters taking over homes that are not theirs. State Senator Dave Severson telling the Senate Judiciary Committee stories continue to stack up about people going on vacation or going to a long-term care facility only to come back home and find someone has taken over their home.
In many cases, seniors who are victimized by this. So doing nothing is going to continue, or a growing number of victimizing seniors.
Severson says his Senate bill would give police more authority to remove squatters. Illinois Association of Chiefs of Police Executive Director Kenny Winslow testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee, saying police hands are too often tied when someone says there's a squatter in their home.
Unless there's some kind of obvious reasons, like we try to look for forced entry, we try to debunk the story, we try to investigate till we can. But when it gets to the bottom, we can't prove it one way or the other, then it becomes a landlord-tenant issue and we walk away.
The measure advanced unanimously out of the Judiciary Committee on Tuesday. Bulls and Hawks in the NBA playoffs tonight. It's a play-in contest. If the Bulls win, they'll take on the loser of the game between the 76ers and Heat tonight. Cubs lost to Arizona 12-11, while the White Sox and Kansas City were rained out. Doubleheader today. The news, a service of McGrath Lexus in Westmont and Chicago. Experience the next level of excellence at McGrath Lexus in nearby Westmont and downtown Chicago. When you do the math, you'll choose McGrath. View new and pre-owned inventory online at McGrathLexus.com. A check of traffic and weather on the way next on AM 560.
Dennis Prager sees a biased world leadership.
The United Nations is a lying, despicable organization. The United Nations has passed more resolutions against Israel than any other country in the world. Iran, North Korea, Communist China, Russia, Israel. Israel's the world villain at the United Nations because there are 52 Muslim countries at the United Nations.
The Dennis Prager Show, weekdays at 11, right before Charlie Kirk at 1 on AM 560. The Answer.
Did the Protestant Reformation suffer a premature death? Absolutely, argues the riveting book, Reviving the Reformation by Dr. Daniel Lang. The book of Acts chapter 21 verse 20 reports that myriads or tens of thousands of Jewish believers dwelled in Jerusalem, and they were all zealous for the Torah. Their leaders were guiding the early Messianic faith. 40 years after the death of Jesus, however, the Jews revolted against Rome. This rebellion caused a Roman hammer to crush Israel, destroying the temple and Jerusalem. Following this devastation, the leadership of the Jerusalem church fell into other hands. Reviving the Reformation recovers the lost first-century Messianic faith. It answers the most difficult questions that some dare not ask about traditional Christianity. Buy Reviving the Reformation on Amazon. For a deep discount, purchase the book securely from the author at revivingthereformation.com. That's revivingthereformation.com. And like Reviving the Reformation on Facebook. With biblical faith fading fast in Western culture, now is the time to restore the truth by reviving the Reformation.
You know, since 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been committed to supporting our nation's first responders and veterans. They support America's heroes like U.S. Army Major Jonathan Turnbull. Now, Major Turnbull sustained devastating injuries at the hands of an ISIS suicide bomber. Tunnel to Towers gave him a specially adapted smart home designed for his needs. Join Tunnel to Towers. They're hoping all of us will donate $11 a month so this great work continues. Their website, the letter T, the number 2, the letter T.org.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details. Homeschooling is becoming much more common these days. Children graduate at a higher rate, and a vast majority of homeschooled children go on to graduate college. But where do you start? How do you homeschool your children? Visit homeschools.org for an amazing homeschool curriculum with Christian values. Christian Liberty Homeschools is a pioneer of the modern homeschool movement and has helped thousands of families get started and succeed. With a Christian Liberty homeschool curriculum, school is on your time. It's flexible, allowing you to vacation whenever you want and making the world your classroom. Watch how your child's confidence soars as you stay in control of the content of your child's education, backed by a great support network. If you're ready to escape from the public school system and homeschool your child in good faith, visit homeschools.org today. Christian Liberty Homeschools, where your child's future is in great hands. That's homeschools.org.
6:09. Let's get an update on the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time. Inbound Kennedy, already 30 minutes. O'Hare into the Burns Circle interchange. You'll hit the brakes at Nagel. Kennedy outbound accident on the exit ramp to Augusta right now, gumming up the works. And the Eichen 33 and climbing from 390 into the old post office. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast in our QC Kinetics Weather Center, Steve Williams.
Today, mostly cloudy, windy, and cooler. A brief shower or two. The high today, 65. Partly cloudy tonight, low 48. Clouds, a shower in spots tomorrow. The high at 61. Mostly sunny, breezy on Friday. The high Friday at 58. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560. The Answer.
In Chicago right now, 67 at O'Hare, 68 at Midway. Your next news update, 6:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We spent the first hour talking about last night's Downers Grove Village Board meeting. The issue that we brought to you yesterday was this removal of a gentleman named Bill Nienberg from the library board by the village board, because in Downers Grove, library board trustees are appointed by the mayor. Mm-hmm. And the importance of this at the local level is, as I've said, it's a microcosm of what's happening around the country, certainly around DuPage County and around Chicagoland and Illinois. The kind of rapaciousness on display of the censorious left. And you can call yourself a nonpartisan board, and you can talk about consensus building all you want. You listen to Leslie Sadowski Fugit for 3 minutes, and you go ahead and howl at the moon if you're going to try and convince me that this is not a bitter, vitriolic, angry, leftist, partisan activist.
Text messages, who wears the pants in Leslie's house?
Yeah. I hear she's a strong proponent of bringing marijuana dispensaries to Downers Grove, too. Yeah. Getting some feedback from Downers Grove residents, a little bit more color on these individuals.
Defile yourselves even more, Downers Grove.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think that she's winning the day on that issue yet. But yet, as you see these communities self-immolate. Greg Hose or Jose, whatever. He had something to say to people who, like residents who spoke up on behalf of Nienberg, and said, what about viewpoint diversity on the board? You're basically just running him off the board on a rail because he disagrees with the manifestations of your ideological bent, which is indeed patently obvious, but of course denied by Leslie Sadowski Fugit and others. Like Greg Hose. Take a listen.
Those, including Mr. Nienberg, who would make this about a conservative viewpoint versus any other, only call attention to yet another breach. Mr. Nienberg is not the conservative representative, as he himself stated in an email to us. He doesn't represent any conservative constituency. His constituency is the entire village of Downers Grove, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, sexual orientation, or any other marker you might want to put out there. To those who have advocated for more conservative voices on the library board, heed this advice. It is entirely hypocritical to engage in viewpoint-based advocacy one moment while decrying it the next.
Heed this advice, Greg, who I guess holds himself out as some sort of attorney, but union attorney, so, heed this advice, Greg. By the way, Greg Hose, another one who's, he's nonpartisan. Really? He was a Democrat candidate for state rep against Ron Zandak. He's going to lecture. Hey, heed this advice to your fallacious line of reasoning. Nobody is suggesting that a conservative would only represent those who agree with them in any position. Library board, village board, president of the United States. That's obvious. To suggest that that is the position of anybody defending Bill Nienberg is to erect a straw man that you knock down, which is what hacks do. And you're a hack. You're a partisan hack, just as your fellow travelers on that board are. Chris Gilmartin, endorsed by Sean Casten. Not a partisan, though. I proudly endorse Chris Gilmartin, Sean Casten. And Sean Casten's not a partisan either. Nobody's partisan. You know, it's funny. The Democrats are completely nonpartisan. It's just these extremists who disagree with them that are sullying our good government with partisan politics. Right.
Trustee Nienberg doesn't seem to show the slightest bit of reflection or ownership or humility in any of his formal responses to his body, including the statement that was read to us tonight. His communication to the council has been simply denial, defiance, blame, and victimhood. Based on the lack of support from the balance of the board, his lack of effectiveness, and his lack of willingness to change, I'm compelled to support this resolution, and I will vote for it.
For more on this, please be joined by the aforementioned William Nienberg. Bill, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thanks for bringing this issue up.
No, my pleasure. It's been illuminating, and I think so for our listeners as well. And obviously, as we know, these are fights that are happening, as I mentioned, in a lot of places, including recently. Josh McBroom in Naperville is a good example. But anyway, on to your case, we played a portion of the statement that your brother-in-law read on your behalf since you were unable to attend because you had work responsibilities. And I don't know how much of it you've been able to see from last night, but there were many residents who spoke up on your behalf very thoughtfully. And then there was Leslie Sadowski-Fugit and Greg Hose and Chris Gilmartin, and you know, Mayor Barnett on your side, but sort of somewhere in the middle intellectually. So, you know, just give us your perspective on this, and particularly if you want to respond to all the slime that was thrown in your direction from those trustees who moved this on you. Please do.
Well, I had to stop watching after Leslie's comments because that was enough to remind me that I'd forgotten my blood pressure medicine at home and needed to go to bed. So I have to watch the rest of it to see what the rest of the other comments were. Leslie and many of the others are still grinding an axe from the drag queen bingo event from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And this was the culmination of a 2-year-long effort to exact revenge for my stance against that event.
Well, why don't you want the drag queen bingo?
Why don't I want the drag queen bingo?
Yeah, tell us.
It's a completely inappropriate event for a public library. That's a starting point. It doesn't afford the dignity that the LGBTQ community deserves. It is not the best representation of the LGBT community. If they wanted to celebrate Coming Out Day and help teens that are going through a period of life where they're coming to grips with their identity, there are much better ways to do that than trotting a sexualized drag queen event into a library.
It's funny. There was a resident who during public comment who said exactly that, and he was referencing a conversation he had with a gay friend of his who was also opposed to the drag queen bingo for the exact same reason. Why are they always presenting people who are gay as, you know, these like just hypersexualized individuals? And so, I mean, that's well within the bounds of substantive, thoughtful discourse on the topic. But I think what Leslie Sadowski...
I'm sure you guys remember David Olson, Representative Olson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who is part of the LGBT community. And when this happened, I asked David to come meet me for coffee because this is how it struck me. But I wanted to hear from someone who is in that life and who has lived that experience. And David validated my point of view that this is not how that community wants to be represented. And I think the gentleman that spoke last night did a good job of reinforcing that.
Yeah, it's funny. I supported David Olson when he replaced Sandak and when he ran back when he ran for COD and then when he ran for state legislative office and ran for re-election and so forth. And so did Jeannie Ives. And I know that we're characterized, and I think we were characterized yesterday by Leslie Sadowski as part of the extremists that are ruining Downers Grove from afar and the country and all that. Supported David Olson. He's gay. So whatever. And then I stopped supporting him, not because he's gay, but because of his voting record on certain things where he did a 180 on us in terms of what he said he would do versus what he did. And I don't need to get into the details, but that's so again, but that's the sort of nuance that is just completely lost on the Leslie Sadowskis and the Greg Hoses and the Chris Gilmartins of the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think, this was not a conversation about David's political view. This is a conversation about David's feelings as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I speculated how that might feel, but he validated it. The other thing that Leslie was really infuriated about was, she wanted to vilify everybody who was opposed to this event and paint them as anti-LGBTQ. And I made a comment from the dais that said, if you're opposed to this, you have every right to be opposed to this. And you should not bow to these attacks that try to paint you as intolerant or that you're motivated by hate. You can be motivated by right thinking and land on the side of opposition of a drag queen event in a library.
So why don't you go to a coffee with Leslie? She seemed a little.
She's very
up in
upset you didn't
arms
reschedule that coffee
Yes.
so she could coach you up. Very upset.
I had no idea she was so offended about that coffee. That was approximately 2 years ago.
Oh my
and apparently this has been bothering her for 2 years, which makes me feel really bad.
She has difficulty letting go, I think, is pretty well established at
She
this
wants
point.
to control you.
Now, Leslie was really good last night. Hers was the only comment that I watched. She was really good at stringing together half-truths and making it sound like a plausible story. She pasted together that coffee story from 2 years ago, which was on the heels of the Drag Queen Bingo event. And then she tried to make it sound like she had reached out to me via an email. That email that she sent to me was in response to one that I had sent to her, trying to answer to the allegations in the library censure. So to paint that as something that she took the initiative to do and that I never responded was completely misleading. But
Bill-
most of her comments were misleading.
Bill, she has conservative friends she talks to all the time at the bus stop and other fictional places she goes with her conservative friends. And they're very understanding. She is a woman for all in Downers Grove, according to her.
I'm not sure she represents all in Downers Grove. I think that was pretty clear last night. Leslie wants to run for mayor, which should frighten everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And this was likely a calculated political play for her to gain support from a portion of the community that she thinks gets very motivated by this kind of activity.
And the other three, that present as, we're dispassionate business professionals who are here to serve our community. We don't have time for these partisan politics that are so bedeviling America these days, even though I've run for state rep and I'm involved in the Democratic Party and so on and so forth. What about those other three gentlemen?
Well, the two out of the three were no surprise. I mean, Greg Jose and Chris Gilmartin were also very offended by my stance on Drag Queen Bingo, and they've been grinding that axe for 2 years. The surprise was Mike Davenport, who ran as a pseudo-conservative, pseudo-Republican in the last election and completely abandoned those voters last night when he voted with the newly formed progressive bloc of the Downers Grove Village Council.
So what are you gonna do now?
Maybe get reappointed to the Economic Development Board, or
yeah.
I mean, you're not going to give up. Are you?
No, definitely not. This is not going away. There's a number of issues we're following up on. There may be some legal challenges to this.
Oh.
They added at the last minute wording to the resolution last night that said neglect of duty and misconduct, and they did that because somebody had made them aware that their motion as it stood was not in compliance with a a state statute that had passed since the last time they railroaded a conservative off the library board. And so they added that language at the last minute, and I think they did that in ignorance of the legal standard that comes with the term misconduct and neglect of duty.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because we played Martin Tully's response to that. Martin Tully, who's a trustee and an attorney, and I thought his explanation of the threshold that misconduct and neglect of office require, the threshold you have to clear to make that charge stick, was very good. And, based on his characterization of the evidence in support of that claim, sounds pretty thin. But I think one of the other things, and the mayor said this, I'm voting against this because basically to vote for it is to implicate ourselves since we have the appointment power. Well, that's true. So, so even though he voted with you, he sort of, there was a little bit of Pontius Pilate from the dais with the mayor. And, I think people looking at the from the outside in and maybe have some memories of Downers Grove once upon a time, have the, what happened? What happened to Downers Grove question? How was you represented by, Anastasia Murray and Leslie Sadowski Fugit? And why is a mayor who otherwise comes across as sensible appointing these rabid political activists to the library board and allowing them to, silence or push out anybody who disagrees with them? I mean, we're sort of just like, what the hell's going on here?
Out with a lot of fire and brimstone, but Bob is a friend. I have nothing bad to say about him. He is dealing with a difficult situation, and Bob is by nature a consensus builder. Mm-hmm. So I think he's doing the best he can. One of the problems we have, and the reason that he appointed or had to appoint somebody who is also not a conservative, is we had a board seat come up within the last year, and we were not able to find quality candidates, which is another sign of the almost incredible flip that's happened in Downers Grove and really DuPage County at large.
Right. You just don't have, they're just not there, or to the extent they're there, they're just not interested in engaging.
If you were a conservative and you watched what just happened to me, would you put your neck out there?
Right.
It's difficult when you see the effectiveness of the cancel culture machine and how quickly and efficiently they orchestrate things like this, which, by the way, Leslie was in cahoots with the library board members that drove this. She was not responding to their request. She was part of the development of the censure and actually surfaced her resolution before the censure had even passed, interestingly. So we're trying to dig into that a little bit more. But
of course there was skullduggery afoot. This is the standard operating procedure, right?
Yeah, but the transformation of Downers Grove and DuPage County is troubling, and we have to do a better job of recruiting people and getting people to step up and help out.
All right, so you're staying. You're not moving to Florida or Scottsdale or anything. You're going to stay. You're going to stick it out.
I would love to move to Florida or Scottsdale, but my wife's family's from here. We love our community. We love our church. We love our school and our friends and our kids' friends, and we're going to stick it out.
All right. Bill Nienberg, former, for now, library board trustee in Downers Grove.
I'm working on appointing myself as the new president of the library board of distrustees, so maybe I'll come back and share some plans.
There you go. The shadow board. I like that. All right, Bill, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. You guys have a good day.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Are you over 30 and putting off life insurance? It's time to get a quick quote from Ethos. A better, easier way to get term life insurance. All online with no medical exam. Answer a few health questions and you could be approved for up to $2 million. Isn't it worth 10 minutes to help protect your family's financial security? Ethos. Up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at checkethos.com. That's checkethos.com.
Raj Shah, host of Unleash Your Wealth.
You know, there are a lot of clients and people coming in from the radio into our office saying, I don't want to lose any money. I need to protect the money I have saved over the last 20 or 30 years, where you have strategies where you can structure an income stream where it has an inflation protection so that as inflation, if it continues to go up, your income will go up.
Unleash Your Wealth, Saturday at 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. on AM 560, The Answer.
Are you ready for an adventure of a lifetime? Journey with me, Mike Gallagher, and Dr. Sebastian Gorka on the Patriots Alaska cruise this summer. It's going to be an incredible opportunity to engage with other like-minded patriots on an epic 7-day cruise over 4th of July. Witness the untouched wilderness of Alaska while discussing America's future. Join Dr. Gorka and me, Mike Gallagher, from June 29th through July the 6th. Call 855-565-5519 or reserve online at patriotsalaskacruise.com.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies supplements, changing the world one life at a time.
My name is Annie, and I have been taking Balance of Nature for over 2.5 years. I mean, this one thing I told my son, I said, if anything ever happens to me, the one thing I want is my Balance of Nature. I don't care if I don't have anything else, but you make sure you order that for me every month. I tell everybody about Balance of Nature. I feel like everybody ought to take them.
Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com and sign up as a new preferred customer. And for a limited time, get 35% off your first order, plus $10 off any additional sets with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this special offer by using discount code CHICAGO.
AM 560, The Answer.
All right, coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
At 6:36, we might as well stay with the absurd locally. Let's go to the absurd nationally. Day 2 of the Trump trial in Manhattan at 6:36.
7 jurors have been seated. But now let's head into the newsroom. Here's Mike Scott.
6:32, 68 degrees in Chicago. Local officials say 3 Russian missiles have slammed into a downtown area of a northern Ukrainian city, striking an apartment building, killing 13. Jury selection will resume Thursday after 7 jurors were selected on Tuesday for Donald Trump's New York City trial. Trump stopped by a neighborhood store afterwards, saying his so-called hush money trial is really about keeping him off the campaign trail.
This is all politics. This is coming out of the White House. And, you know, it makes me campaign locally, and that's okay.
The former president is accused of falsifying business records in order to try and cover up payments made to an adult film actress just prior to the 2016 election. The House has sent the Senate articles of impeachment for the head of Homeland Security, the first cabinet member to be impeached in over 100 years.
All persons are commanded to keep silent on pain of imprisonment while the House of Representatives is exhibiting to the Senate of the United States articles of impeachment against Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas.
Republicans say it's due to his handling of the U.S.-Mexico border. 6 Republican governors today will speak out against efforts by the UAW to unionize car factories in their states. The governors of Tennessee and 5 other states have already released a joint statement against unionizing. At least 2 are injured after a tornado rips through eastern Kansas. Also, no injuries reported after an American Airlines flight was struck by lightning and forced to make an emergency landing at Kansas City International Airport. That commercial jet craft was on its way to Chicago. 3 men wounded in a drive-by shooting in the Inglewood neighborhood Tuesday night. Chicago police said a 51-year-old man was shot in the back of the head, transported to Mount Sinai in critical condition. A Northwest Side alderman has filed a complaint against the head of the independent agency that oversees the Chicago Police Department after she spoke with several media outlets regarding the fatal shooting of Dexter Reed Jr. after he first shot at police. Alderman Nicholas Pizzato sent that letter to the city's Office of the Inspector General criticizing Andrea Kirsten, who is the chief administrator of COPA. A death investigation is underway after the body of a man was found in Lake Michigan near Lincoln Park yesterday. And in Chicago sports, the Bulls open playoff basketball tonight with a play-in contest against Atlanta. Ian Happ had a grand slam, but it was not enough as the Cubs lost to the Diamondbacks 12-11. Yesterday's game between the White Sox and KC wiped out because of rain. It will be made up as part of a straight-on doubleheader beginning this afternoon. And the Blackhawks lost to Vegas 3-1. The news, a service of Crosscom Public Adjusters. It's 6:35. We'll have a check of traffic and weather on the way next on AM 560.
The Sean Thompson Show.
Joe Biden tells Netanyahu to reduce civilian casualties or risk U.S. support. So what does that mean? Hey, you moron. What does that mean? Are you single-handedly going to abandon Israel in the name of the 7th century barbarians who started the whole conflict? And you want to blame Israel for the death of aid workers who should have never been there in the first place? How many aid workers were in Japan when we dropped 2 nukes on it?
The Sean Thompson Show. Weekday afternoons at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Fellas, there's a lot of people talking about testosterone, but do your homework and go to a provider that you can trust. I recommend my friends at Low T Center. It's where I get my levels checked the past several years. At Low T Center, they make it quick and easy. You walk in and take a simple blood test, and you'll get your results back in about 25 minutes. If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have noticed weight gain and loss of muscle mass, you may have low T levels. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online. That's lowtcenter.com. Tell them Dan Prof sent you when you do. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency on earth, and if you owe back taxes, the news isn't good. The IRS is raising the interest rate it charges on unpaid taxes, and further rate hikes are expected. Most people don't know it, but the IRS adds interest charges to your tax debts daily. So if you owe the IRS today, you'll owe even more tomorrow. And it doesn't stop until you get right with the IRS. The good news is getting right can start with one phone call to Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax relief firm. Optima's tax professionals specialize in the Fresh Start Initiative, a powerful IRS program that can save you thousands if you qualify. In fact, the experts at Optima have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients. Call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-965-1433. 800-965-1433. 800-965-1433.
Optima Tax Relief. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
This is Hugh Hewitt for Townhall.com. The circle of appeasers in the Biden White House have brought us nothing but a lethal combination of softly spoken words and an ever-present, always controlling fear of escalation. Appeasement was a theory of the world we thought crushed by the events leading to World War II. But it lives on in the urgent entreaties of the United States in the wake of Iran's attack on Israel, backed up by leaks to a compliant press, urging Israel to do nothing at all, after salvos of missiles and drones were launched at its people, and of course, to not close on the 5,000 to 10,000 armed terrorists and Hamas leadership hiding in Rafah. Those terror leaders are protected by the Blinken, Sullivans, and Shermans of the United States, propping up an infirm president who can muster only an absurd admonition, don't, and can't deliver a speech from the Oval Office, apparently. Scorn is the right response, and resolve to throw them all out in November. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Don't pay retail for your diamond engagement ring or gift. Come to cleanorigin.com.
6:38, the news, a service of Remke's Garage. Remke's Garage is your Sprinter, Diesel, and Toyo Tire headquarters. Visit remkesgarage.com, REMKES garage.com, and schedule your inspection today. Tri-State debris cleanup northbound between Roosevelt and the Ike is done. Just a touch of the brakes there right now. Bishop Ford, stop and go, inbound from 115th into the Dan Ryan. Ryan itself, 20 minutes, 95th into the Burns Circle interchange. Traffic, a service of Rasmussen University, online and on campus. Are you ready to rewrite your story? Learn more at rasmussen.edu. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. Mostly cloudy in your forecast, becoming windier and cooler today, a high of 65. In our QC Kinetics Weather Center, 67 in clouds at O'Hare. Your next news update is at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The Trump trial, day 2, talking Manhattan, of course. As you mentioned, Amy, we've got 7 jurors now seated in that trial. I didn't hear, how many of them are members of Biden's cabinet?
We don't know yet.
Uh-huh.
That didn't come out yet.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. And one of them celebrated Trump's loss on social media. But that juror is in. Mm-hmm. Sort of what you expected. I mean, again, if the thing is going to be wired by the prosecutor and the judge, you might as well wire up the jury, too. I mean, why leave anything to chance?
312-642-5600, turnkey.pro answer line. You can also reach us on our text line, 64636. Type in DA, then a quick comment.
The Trump lawyers, just so you know they weren't asleep at the switch, tried to prevent that juror from being seated. They wanted to have a preemptory challenge to excuse the juror. But the judge said, nope, she can be impartial. She stays. Of course, the conflicted judge says the prospective juror who celebrated Trump's 2020 loss can be impartial, just like he can be.
This is so rigged from the get-go. And all this is election interference. There's no there.
You know, the funny thing about that election interference piece, though, is, you know, the argument, Trump could be in Georgia and North Carolina and across the country. But you know what? I mean, all eyes are on Trump. So is it really election? I mean, I understand the argument and I'm sympathetic to it. But the flip side of this whole thing boomeranging, increasingly looking like it's going to boomerang on Biden Incorporated, is that all this does is focus everyone's attention on Trump. You know, this is right, the trial of the century kind of coverage, a la OJ. And people are following this courtroom drama as it's unfolding and not much of anything else. I mean, other than having to live their daily lives with people that are in their neighborhoods who are legal and you're paying for them and what you're paying at the pump and at the grocery store. I mean, those things aren't forgotten. But I mean, I don't know how this all redounds to Biden's benefit when Trump is out there, right? You know, as soon as they've adjourned for the day, Trump is visiting the bodega in New York where Jose Alba had to defend his life against a knife-wielding thug and then was wrongly arrested and charged with murder. I mean, sort of, he was Daniel Penny before Daniel Penny, and it allows Trump to highlight what's going on in major cities run by Democrats, as he did.
Yeah, no, they believe. I heard 78% think it's a rigged deal. And it is a rigged deal. It's a rigged trial. Our courts, everything is screwed up in New York, and the whole world is watching. This judge is so conflicted. You understand that. You'll take a look at that. There's never been a judge so conflicted as this. It's ridiculous. And also, there's no crime. You know where the crime is? In the bodegas, where they come and rob them every week. Or more than that. This is all politics. This is coming out of the White House. And, you know, it makes me campaign locally, and that's okay. I don't think better now than we've ever done. So I think it's having a reverse effect. You know what? All I want is fairness. And these people have to be treated better. The Bodega Association, bodegas, because every week they're being robbed 2-3 times. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you know what? The police can do it. They can stop it. But they have to be allowed to do their job.
So now he's got a twofer. He's got the rigged system, the system that's rigged against me, but it's really rigged against you, and they're just coming after me to get to you. Don't forget that. And, oh, by the way, the lawlessness that has been inflicted upon metropolitan areas around this country by decarceration, deprosecution, defund the police, open borders, Democrats.
But what I'm concerned about, I mean, he made a remark about the judge, and now Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor, he wants him put in jail for 30 days because of, comments that he made and also on social media about Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen.
Sleazebags.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please put Trump in jail for 30 days. See
Right.
how that works out.
Right.
Do it. I beg you to.
It's going to be like, they're going to be outside the jail like Crazy Joe Clark.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's going to be. Joe, you got to go out there and calm the crowd down.
But it does. I mean, this is fine for the first week of the trial, but it eventually, I think it's going to get old, and he does need to be out there. And Trump knows that he needs to be out in swing states.
I should be right now in Pennsylvania, in Florida, in many other states, North Carolina, Georgia, campaigning. This is all coming from the Biden White House because the guy can't put two sentences together. He can't campaign. They're using this in order to try and win an election.
Yeah, and he'll do rallies on the weekends, and that's all he needs to do, really.
All right, so no golf for a while.
It's interesting, too. I mean, so how is this going? Trump, you heard Trump reference, it's going better than we're doing better than we've ever done. Well, again, more polling that is pretty encouraging, should be for Trump supporters, and certainly is for the former president, as you heard. Now, again, snapshots in time, long way to go, all the caveats, but this survey of 1,059 registered voters by New York Times Siena, mostly good for America, 25%. Mostly good for America, Joe Biden. Joe Biden, how has Joe Biden's administration been? 25% say mostly good for America, 46% say mostly bad. Donald Trump, 42% say mostly good, 33% say mostly bad. So Joe Biden is underwater by 21 points, and Donald Trump is +9. And, oh, by the way, the Leslie Sadowski Fugit on MSNBC, her name's Joy Reid. Or maybe Leslie Sadowski Fugit is the Downers Grove version of Joy Reid. I'm not sure. You can go either way with it, I suppose. This is Joy Reid's perspective.
Yeah.
And, you want to run this race hustle? You want to run this virulent identitarian rap? Go ahead. Go ahead. Joy Reid, here's somebody else doing Trump a favor, and she doesn't know it.
There is something wonderfully poetic about the fact that despite the fact that even if convicted, he's not going to go to prison, the first person to actually criminally prosecute Donald Trump is a black Harvard grad, the very kind of person that his former staff, the people who worked for him, Stephen Miller, et cetera, want to never be at Harvard Law School. But he was. And he came out and graduated, and he's prosecuting you, Donald. And a black woman is doing that same exact thing in Georgia. And a black woman forced you to pay a $175 million fine that's out now also in question because the people who put it up, that might not be legit. Donald Trump is being held to account by the very multicultural, multiracial democracy that he's trying to dismantle. And for me, there's something poetic and actually wonderful about that. It says something good about our country that we're still capable of having that happen. Go DEI. My DEIs are bringing it home on today.
My DEIs are bringing it home?
Yeah.
Go team.
My DEIs are bringing it home. That's the kind of America you want to live in? The the substance of a particular criminal proceeding doesn't matter. What matters is the identity of the prosecutor, the identity of the defendant. That's what matters.
Black female. That's what matters to her.
My DEIs are bringing it home.
Really? Fannie Willis is really bringing it home? I think she kind of stepped in it, besides wearing her dress on backwards.
That's Joy Reid's America. That's Leslie Sadowski-Fugit's America. Is it yours? Well, if it's not, you better put up a bit of a fight for it. 312-642-5600. Turnkey.pro, answer line Mike, Northwest Indiana.
Good morning, guys. I think they're saving President Trump a ton in campaign finance money. Doesn't have to spend. You look at Biden's campaigns, we had 75 sycophants show up, and most of them are on the government payroll or hardcore Democrats. The Democratic Party is going to get barbecued beyond their wildest imaginations this November. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, Joe Biden yesterday, because he can go out and campaign, and he was at Scranton being Scranton Joe, claiming victory over Trump for some reason.
He learned that paying taxes was something people who work for a living did, not him. He learned that telling people you're fired was something to laugh about. Listen to what he says. He says, quote, "I'll be dictator on day one. Quote, I am your retribution." He promises, quote, "a bloodbath if he loses." I wake every morning thinking about how to make life better like you do for working and middle-class families here in Scranton and all across the country.
I mean, nobody was even there. I mean, I don't know if they had to pay people to show up, but he's not the it girl.
Ron, Southside.
Dan and Amy. Joy Reid is a blithering idiot.
And a Harvard grad. Those two things are increasingly synonymous, not mutually exclusive.
Absolutely, but guess what? We will see in November. Chop it up. Have a good day.
All right, Ron. Thanks for the call. Robert, Bloomingdale.
This is disgusting stuff. My question is, from a legal standpoint, is why couldn't Team Trump take this demand that this judge recuse himself and take the case to another state where Trump would probably get a fair trial and eventually it would be thrown out? What do you think?
Motion for the judge to recuse himself, denied. Motion for change of venue, denied. Grounds for an appeal if he's convicted. But that's how it works. Dan and Amy, Chicago's Morning Answer.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies supplements, changing the world one life at a time.
My name is Annie, and I have been taking Balance of Nature for over 2.5 years. I mean, this one thing I told my son, I said, if anything ever happens to me, the one thing I want is my Balance of Nature. I don't care if I don't have anything else, but you make sure you order that for me every month. I tell everybody about Balance of Nature. I feel like everybody ought to take them.
Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com and sign up as a new preferred customer. And for a limited time, get 35% off your first order, plus $10 off any additional sets with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this special offer by using discount code CHICAGO.
Oh, the signs of spring are upon us. Birds are singing, crocuses are popping up, and your concrete is sinking. Permaseal can help with that. I'm Roy Spencer with Permaseal. As you start your spring cleaning, you'll likely see some cracked or sunken concrete, a sidewalk, stoop, driveway, or your patio. These problems will only get worse with time, but there is an easy solution. Our polylevel system can raise and level concrete quickly and effectively, putting an end to eyesores and dangerous trip hazards. Call today for a free estimate, 800-421-SEAL. Polylevel is the quickest, least expensive, and most durable system to repair your sunken concrete problems. Don't live with a problem that will only get worse.
Permaseal has been making Chicagoland and Northwest Indiana homes healthier and more valuable for over 45 years. Call today to receive 10% off or up to 18 months no-interest financing. Don't replace it, raise it. Call 800-421-7325 or visit permaseal.net.
Guys, you've been feeling tired, grumpy, or have noticed lack of motivation and drive, have weight gain or loss of muscle mass. These could all be signs of low testosterone levels. You can trust my friends at Low T Center, where I've been getting my levels checked the past 8 years. At Low T Center, they make it easy to get your levels checked. It's a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you get your results back in about 25 minutes. Low T Center is not your typical doctor's office. It's concierge medicine for men. Their physicians specialize in treating low testosterone with customized treatment plans for each patient. Most health insurance is accepted for treatment. They have affordable and convenient options for treatment, including physician-monitored self-inject treatments for established patients that ships directly to you each month, so there's no need to drive to the center for weekly visits. And right now, Low T Center is only $25 to get your T-level tested. So make your health and quality of life a priority. Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment online today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest-growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Frank Vance, co-owner of Egan Vance Insurance Agency on Chicago's Northwest Side and a customer of Signature Bank. In my line of work, we pride ourselves on being there for our clients when they need it the most, and we recognize when someone does the same for us. As Egan Vance was expanding, we wanted to buy a much sought-after building in the neighborhood. We couldn't waste any time. I called Signature Bank, and that was all it took. I didn't have to talk to multiple people in siloed departments with multiple forms to fill out. One call did it all. As the one who was always looking out for my clients, it was a great change to know that my bank, Signature Bank, was looking out for me.
Signature Bank is looking for their next success story. To learn more about turning your business vision into reality, visit signaturebank.bank. Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, a couple more comments on the Trump trial in its infancy, but as we were talking about, 7 jurors have been seated by the hopelessly conflicted judge mentioned, right? But we mentioned the one juror who celebrated Trump's 2020 loss, but was seated anyway.
How did they let that happen?
They let that happen? Well, they objected, and the judge says, no, she can be impartial, or the juror, I don't know if it's a she, the juror can be impartial, so it's all good. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Sorry, Judge. Okay.
Mayor Adams, Eric Adams
really?
has chimed in on this. He's given us his assurance.
In your city will be fair to former President Trump.
The city is a fair city, and that's why they're on the jury duty. Both sides is tied, and they interview and make their determination.
Well, it's a fair city. So
nothing to see here, folks.
Don't worry. Your pretty
Smirch
little
my
ads.
reputation, yes.
Yeah. I'm sure Brandon Johnson would say the same thing about Chicago, and they would be he would be equally wrong. Also, too, we're getting a lot of opinions on this. And Jen
Let it cook, dude. Come on.
Becky. She's got a show on MSNBC. You probably don't know because
nobody watches it.
Yeah, we're basically the only people who have to watch it. But she got noted legal scholar John Legend to weigh in on the Trump Trump trial.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That's slow of a news day.
Yeah, John Legend is giving all of him. See what I did there? Yeah. All of me. You know,
just don't start singing it, please.
No, I don't have the range of a John Legend. But I do have a keener legal mind, as does everybody else listening. John Legend, an in-depth discussion about our legal system with Jen Psaki said this.
Well, he is a part of a two-tier system of justice, but not in the way that he thinks he is. Mm-hmm. He is getting way more concessions than the average criminal defendant would get. He's getting delays. He's got access to all kinds of lawyers that are filing this and filing that, delaying every trial. And most people don't have access to that kind of lawyering, don't have access to the kind of concessions that the justice system will provide to you if you can afford it.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the favorite lines of the left, too. We've been hearing this for a while, is this special treatment that Trump is getting because his lawyers are filing motions in the various cases and so forth. Well, first of all, if he wasn't running for president, he wouldn't be on trial in any of these jurisdictions.
Right, exactly. And that's what you have to keep in mind. It's the fact that he's running again and they couldn't beat him, or they don't think they can beat him at the ballot box, so now they're going after him with these, frivolous criminal and civil cases.
And secondly, there's been some good write-ups on this. We don't have time to get into detail now. But if anything, when it comes to particularly the federal trials, federal cases, Trump is not being afforded the same courtesies, not just courtesies, but the actual standard timeframes for motions and filings and responses as any other federal defendant, federal criminal defendant. So he is not getting special treatment. He's getting special treatment, but not in the way John Legend thinks. He's getting special treatment because he's been targeted for elimination by the justice system at the federal and some of the state levels. That's the special treatment. Coming up at 7:07, we'll talk Israel-Iran with a professor from Clemson.
It is now 7 a.m. WIND Chicago.
Senators will be sworn in as jurors later today. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News, and Republican Tim Scott has already made up his mind in the case against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
They are guilty of the greatest invasion in American history.
Fox's Lucas Tomlinson reports that House Republicans delivered impeachment articles after Mayorkas testified at a hearing.
Over 7 million migrants have been encountered since President Biden took office. That's more than 3 times more for the 4 years under Donald Trump. Mayorkas recently changed his assessment and now calls it a crisis. He also said the federal government is doing all it can to keep illegal migrants from coming in.
With the resources and the authorities that we have been provided, it is as secure as we can make it.
Senate Democrats may not even hold a trial, saying Mayorkas committed no crime and there's just a policy dispute. There's uncertainty in the House over votes on foreign aid bills. House Speaker Mike Johnson has been pushing, but some of his fellow Republicans are pushing back, threatening to oust the Speaker over allowing a vote on additional military aid to Ukraine they oppose. But Congressman Ryan Zinke tells Fox Business,
I think it's a distraction. He's not going anywhere.
Ukraine's president again pleading for more American air defense after a Russian missile attack this morning killed at least 13 people in the city of Chernihiv. After Iran's weekend attack on Israel, Fox's Trey Yingst reports from Tel Aviv.
The United States will impose new sanctions on Iran's drone and missile programs. The move is meant to put new pressure on the Islamic Republic and try to dissuade Israel from launching a heavy counterstrike.
Iran warned today that even the tiniest Israeli invasion would lead to a massive and harsh response. There's no court today for former President Trump in New York, so jury selection will resume tomorrow. They've picked 7 jurors so far. He calls it political persecution, trying to silence him.
The gag order is totally unconstitutional. The judge should not be there. The judge is highly conflicted.
America's listening.
68 degrees. Partly to mostly cloudy at 7:02 on AM 560. The Answer. Good morning. I'm Mike Scott. 5 Naperville schools were put on lockdown amid a shooting investigation in the area Tuesday afternoon.
He was just screaming, like, hurry up, I am bleeding, and I think he was scared.
Neuqua Valley High School, Clough Elementary, and others were locked down as a precaution. The investigation was centered on a home along Leach Drive. A 22-year-old man there was found shot, taken to a local hospital. Police believe the shooting was targeted. A senior administrator for both the village of Dalton and Thornton Township is now charged with engaging in bankruptcy fraud. Federal prosecutors say Keith Freeman made false statements in his bankruptcy petition filed earlier this year to conceal from creditors assets and sources of income. The Chicago Teachers Union gearing up for contract talks. The CTU presented its formal contract proposal to CPS yesterday. CTU President Stacey Davis Gates, herself embroiled in controversy, saying they have very different demands this time around.
By the end of the contract that we're on right now, we'll have a social worker in every school.
By the end of this contract, we'll have a nurse in every school. Those were things that we fought for in 2019.
Negotiations come as the district works to try and fill a $391 million deficit. A man accused of defacing a Chicago school with anti-Semitic profanity and swastikas. Police say Jared Barnes has been arrested and now charged with a hate crime. The ADL's David Goldenberg.
The Jewish community in Illinois and across the country is experiencing unprecedented levels of anti-Semitism.
It happened at the Nettlehorse School this week. Glenview State Senator Laura Fine says incidents have been on the increase since last October.
Since October 7th, my community has been on edge. I'm constantly hearing from families saying that their children are afraid to go to school simply because they are Jewish.
State police report as many as 211 incidents last year in Illinois. Chicago sports. Bulls open playoffs tonight. It's the play-in contest against Atlanta. Cubs surrender a late 3-run lead in a 12-11 loss to Arizona. White Sox rained out against Kansas City, a doubleheader today. The news, a service of Turnkey.pro. Turnkey's real-time threat hunting defends you, your employees, and your customers from vulnerable cyber attacks. Shield your complete infrastructure from malware, phishing scams, and other threats. Visit Turnkey.pro. A check of traffic and weather on the way next on AM 560.
Brandon Tatum sees us reaping what we sow.
It is insane what America has endured during the Biden administration. Are you happy now? For everybody out there that hated Donald Trump and was talking all that trash about Donald Trump, he don't love man. He did a Russia collusion. He's a racist. I'm hoping that people are waking up and seeing the truth about what's happening.
The Officer Tatum Show, weeknights at 8, right before Sean Hannity at 10 on AM 560. The Answer.
All right, who's there for heroes or their families left behind when a service member or a first responder dies or is catastrophically injured in the line of duty? Who helps our country's homeless vets? I'll tell you who. It's the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Never forget the sacrifices of our country's greatest heroes. They're hoping all of us will donate $11 a month. Just go to their website, the letter T, the number 2, the letter T.org, the letter T, number 2, letter T.org for the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Support our police and hire the police to personally protect you. You've watched the news. Rising crime has been affecting our everyday lives in Illinois more and more these days. Blue Star Security can protect you, your business, or your place of worship. Blue Star Security is the only security company in Chicago with over 900 off-duty police officers, all W-2 employees.
I'm Anthony Varchetto, president of Blue Star Security and a 20-year law enforcement veteran. The Blue Star team is made up of over 900 state-certified active and retired law enforcement professionals. We serve businesses and private organizations with supply chain and special event security, and also protect our loved ones at places of worship and schools all across the Chicagoland area. Blue Star Security's technology allows mobilization of off-duty officers quickly and efficiently. Our primary mission is to provide unparalleled protective services for each assignment with integrity, while maintaining our commitment to community service in the Chicagoland area.
Visit online to schedule a free security consultation at BlueStarSecurityLLC.com. That's BlueStarSecurityLLC.com.
7:07, let's get an update on the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time, a service of Crosscom Public Adjusters. Handling an insurance claim for your home and business is difficult. Crosscom will help you maximize your claim and get what you need. They've helped thousands. CrosscomPublicAdjusters.com. The Kennedy sits at 1 hour from O'Hare into the Burns Circle interchange. If you're traveling on the Ike, 1 hour from 390 into the old post office. The Stevenson right now doing all right, 49, 355 into DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Traveling inbound on the Dan Ryan, 23, 95th into the Burns Circle interchange. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast in our QC Kinetics Weather Center, Steve Williams.
Lots of clouds, windy and cool. Brief shower today, the high 65. Partly cloudy tonight, low 48. Clouds, a shower in spots tomorrow, the high 61. Breezy sunshine on Friday, the high 58. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
68 at Midway, 65 Aurora, 66 Lakefront. Your next news update, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Morning, Dan and Amy. An underreported aspect of the present situation in the Middle East against the backdrop of the Iranian attack on Israel over the weekend, and the backdrop of Democrats like Elizabeth Warren running around accusing Israel of genocide, not to mention whatever anti-Semitic drivel is coming out of the mouths of the socialist Spice Girls like Tlaib and Omar and AOC. And the Biden administration's chastisement of Netanyahu specifically to try to score points with a constituency he needs in Michigan come November. Something that has been lost in all of that is for all the calls for ceasefire and all the criticisms of Israel, it's the Iranian-backed Hamas terrorist organization that is rejecting any ceasefire deal.
And
in point of fact,
I'm sorry, people forget about that is a fact.
Well, in point of fact, where it's at now, and this is according to Biden's State Department, Hamas is the barrier and obstacle to a ceasefire in Gaza. Matthew Miller said that. Hamas is demanding a 6-week truce in which it releases no hostages, while Israel stops fighting, withdraws from Gaza's cities, and commits to a permanent ceasefire, a withdrawal from Gaza, and the return of all Palestinians, including Hamas, to northern Gaza. In other words, they want Israel to surrender. That's reasonable. That's likely. No. Only in the second phase, over a subsequent 6 weeks, while Israel executes that surrender, would Hamas release some hostages in exchange for terrorist prisoners. Right. Who wants to sign up for that deal? Certainly not the Israelis, whatever the war council's infighting is there. That's just absurd. But that absurdity is being underreported. Something else, too, I was just thinking about this over the weekend with the Iranian attack. Failed, thankfully, as it did.
Yeah. And
some of the characterizations of it. The conversation about how this regime, the first 2 terms under Obama and this 3rd term under Biden, has underwritten Iran's terrorist activities is just, it just has to be emphasized. I mean, it is in the most positive light possible, it is one of the worst foreign policy blunders in the history of this country, in my view. And in something less charitable, it's borderline traitorous, particularly the continuation of it, even as you have the Secretary of State and others say, yeah, Iran uses money to sponsor terror. That's what the mullahs in Tehran do. Right. And so we're unfreezing assets. Why?
Well, they said they're going to monitor the assets that they release.
5 minutes ago, they were our partner in peace to a nuclear deal. Partner in peace in the Middle East. Right. But it reminded me of the 60 Minutes piece last year about the Iranian sponsor of terrorist activities in this country, assassination squads, actually, targeting U.S. officials, including officials in the Trump administration, including John Bolton.
Oh, that's right.
Was posted online by a channel affiliated with Iran's Revolutionary Guard. it vows to kill former American government officials, including President Trump, to avenge the 2020 U.S. assassination of the terrorism mastermind Qasem Soleimani. Threats like this have been deemed credible enough that several of these officials have been under round-the-clock protection, including former Defense Secretary Mark Esper, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Iran reportedly offered a hitman $1 million to kill him, and John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor.
They bargained the price for me would be $300,000, which I have to say I found insulting.
So what exactly was the plot against you?
The Revolutionary Guard sought to procure either my kidnapping or my assassination, not directly by a Revolutionary Guard's member, but by seeking a hitman who would carry out the job either in the U.S. or abroad.
The FBI has an arrest warrant out for this Iranian officer, claiming that he hired the hitman online to travel to Washington, corner Bolton in a garage, and kill him. But it turned out, lucky for Bolton, the assassin was an FBI informant.
This was not internet chatter. This was a negotiation to murder an American citizen, a former government official.
Is the threat against you ongoing?
We've got marked Secret Service cars that say police, United States Secret Service, outside my home.
Also, regular Iranian citizens, dissidents, who fled Iran under threat of death and work against the totalitarian regime there. One such woman who was profiled was Masih Alinejad. She was included in the 60 Minutes piece.
It's like, wow, the government from my own country trying to kill me, but my adopted country trying to protect me. You have to be an Iranian to survive assassination plot, to understand that how it feels to survive in America and to have the platform and to criticize the U.S. government.
You're tearing up. Tell me why you're tearing up.
Because people in my country get killed for criticizing, get shot in head for the crime of criticizing.
And what do we see at the airports and bridges and college campuses? Death to America. Real persuasive, real intelligent. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by Arash Azizi. He's a senior lecturer in history and political science at Clemson University, contributing writer for The Atlantic and author of What Iranians Want, Women, Life, and Freedom. Arash Azizi, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, Adrian. It's great to be with you.
The piece you wrote, Ordinary Americans Don't Want a War with Israel. Ordinary Iranians don't want a war with Israel, that is. I think most people would stipulate to that, but how are we supposed to receive that in terms of thinking about our response to the Iranian government?
It's a good question. The United States and Western countries have, for a long time, haven't really had a coherent policy to deal with Iran and the Iranian government. And it's not an easy question to have a coherent policy on. The Iranian regime is a malign actor, and it's a very tough malign actor. And it's hard. But as to what can be done, my position has always been that there should be support for Iranian people and their quest for democracy, and there are a variety of ways that support can be given. But that attacking Iran or war or even the kind of aggressive sanctions don't necessarily work. As they haven't. I heard your piece before this. I'm sure we will disagree on a lot of stuff. But look, I'll tell you this. Leaving the Iranian nuclear deal in 2018 by President Trump gave power and empowered the most hardline elements inside Iran. And we can rehash it the different ways. Anyways, today is a different time. But I'll say this: whatever this conversation is, and we can have it, it's not very straightforward. If it was just an easy task of you're just a tough guy and you do something for the Iranian regime to disappear or get overthrown, I'll be the first one to support it. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that.
Well, how did it empower people when Trump got out of the deal in 2018?
Well, because there was a faction in the regime that had made the Iran deal of 2015, and that had wanted to better its ties with the United States and the West. This faction had support of the majority of Iranians that voted for them. Look, we didn't think they were good guys, right? But they wanted better relations with the West. They opposed Iran's policy in the region. They opposed the dominance of this anti-Israel militia, IRGC, in Iranian politics. And after Trump left, they were severely weakened because that was their only policy, sort of signature achievement. Look, we can't do counterfactual history. I'm not saying if Trump hadn't left Khamenei, would have necessarily Khamenei, that is the supreme leader in Iran, who's the root of all of our problems, he would have necessarily been weakened. I don't know, but I don't think it helped. And I'll tell you something else. The Islamic Republic wouldn't have as advanced a nuclear program now that it does now. So, and this is, as I said, it's not so much rehash the past, it's to say that look, I'll tell you this, in the United States, if we honestly try to look, tons of different people in different administrations have really done, with good intentions often, try to do something against this regime. And I think it's bad for U.S. discourse when you call your own president and patriotic people serving this government as traitors and supporters of Iran, just because they've adopted a slightly different path of diplomacy. And anybody who works with us, those who are Iran experts like me, we've talked to people. There really is no easy solution to this thing. Because Iran is a malign and tough actor.
Well, here's the thing about that. I mean, I'm not saying there's an easy solution, and but I am saying you start with first principles, and to me, I mean, this is just sort of baseline common sense. You don't suggest that a country is the lead state sponsor of terror in the world, which is a phrase that is almost always associated with Iran, including by this administration, and turn around and underwrite them with, when you include the oil profits that they've generated thanks to our energy policy under this administration over the last decade, is probably getting upwards of $400 billion. See, to me, that doesn't make sense. So we can talk about how you try to aid moderate elements. We can support the college kids on the streets, as we did during the Green Revolution. All that's fine. But
you didn't do that, by the way, during the Green Revolution. The United States did very little to help. The United States did very little.
Okay, we could have done more. I'm saying, so fine. I'm all for supporting any peaceful pluralist movements in Iran, but I am not for the folly of underwriting the mullahs in Tehran and suggesting, oh, no, we're monitoring this, or these are segregated funds only for humanitarian aid. Give me a break. And so what's the money they're using to finance the Houthis in Yemen and Hezbollah and Hamas and the Islamic Jihad? I mean, come on.
Let me tell you where the money is. Look, this is a misconception. Iran is a country of 90 million. It has ties with China and Russia and North Korea and other countries in the world. Other countries in the world, look, unfortunately or not, it's a good free market world. The countries don't care. They don't always care with the. So there's nothing that the United States can do that will. There is, of course. We can talk about it, right? But it's very little that. No matter what the United States does, Iran will always have access to millions of dollars to fund these groups. After all, during the 4 years of Trump administration, did Iran do less any of this stuff?
No,
but administration it was when Iran attacked Saudi Arabia, and the United States did nothing.
I understand. But I understand rogue states are going to do what rogue states do, but it doesn't mean we have to be party to financing them. That's pretty straightforward.
Well, but it's not a matter of course, the U.S. is not financing Iran, right? It's what it was doing under the Iran deal. But return to it's a pretty big, significant achievement of getting rid of its nuclear program. It gave some concessions to it. Iran was still it still is the most sanctioned country in the world. So sure, Biden could, if you support the sanctions, you can say Biden could do more on enforcing the oil sanctions. But Biden has also maintained the sort of channel with Iran and has used it for other purposes. It's a dangerous situation. But all I'm saying is, there can be a policy debate But I can assure you, I know people in the State Department and others who are working on this. They are worried as much about the threat of Iran as any other person, and it's not like they're dupes or they haven't thought of this.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that, but I know that the House just voted 383-11 to expand sanctions against Chinese financial institutions that buy Iranian oil. So we'll see if the administration signs on to that overwhelmingly bipartisan measure. So, I mean, these sanctions can be both direct and indirect to further punish Iran, a punishment it richly deserves, the regime richly deserves, whether the people do or not. I mean, that's how it works when you're trying to tackle a totalitarian regime, as you know, saying, I mean, you said it at the outset, this is complicated, and there are some tools that we have and can use, and there is collateral damage, but we also can't sit idly by, not to mention, given the domestic terrorist activities that 60 Minutes, not exactly a conservative outlet, documented too. So, I mean, yes, it's one malign actor. It's a big one. And we were reminded of just how big it was with the effort they made over this weekend to inflict more carnage on Israel. And I wonder how you see that attack, because some have suggested, like those folks over at The Intercept, that that wasn't really an effort, despite what you heard from Biden administration officials, to inflict maximum carnage. That didn't make Iran weaker and Israel stronger, the failure of the drones and the missiles to get through the Iron Dome, that this was just a show. This was a shot across the bow. So how should we understand what happened over the weekend, that attempted attack?
It's a tough one, and there, people who have real intelligence, will have to sort of talk about that as well. But here's my assessment. I mean, I think the Iranian regime didn't want a direct confrontation with Israel because it knows that would be suicidal. At the same time, I think it didn't expect all the missiles and drones that it fired to have so little of an effect. So I guess I'm a bit of a middling position. I mean, I do think they didn't really want to go kill a lot of people or do something like that, because they knew that would be suicidal for them, right? Can you imagine if, 30 Israeli civilians had been killed? Israel would probably have to respond immediately, and the regime couldn't have taken it. So I don't think they want a war, because I think Khamenei is quite smart, and he knows that he takes his time, and he has done this sort of over a long period. It's what he calls the strategic patience. So I don't think it was a change from that. It was kind of the answers we expected. But I do think it does show number one, it shows Israel has the support of the West and even its neighboring country, Jordan. And, if you believe to some reports from other Arab countries, it has potential support, and that it was thankfully able to defeat these attempts by Iran. And what Amos Harel, the military correspondent over at Haaretz in the Israeli newspaper, said was that this really shows that the axis of resistance, this group of anti-Israel groups supported by Iran, what is their main weapon? It's drones and missiles. And this attack shows that they probably have very limited, they have relatively limited use. Well, of course, it's a different question if Hezbollah also attacks in the north at the same time, and there could be that, but Israel did pretty well.
Well, Israel has not. They are going to retaliate. We don't know when. We don't know how. What do you think would be appropriate?
As to what would be appropriate, it's not just what I think, but what the United States and most other countries have been calling on Israel. In fact, you read the columnists, basically those who are on the right, those who are on the left. It's very clear that a possibility of escalation of a direct war between Iran and Israel is a pretty catastrophic one. It would be terrible for the region, it would be terrible for the people of Iran, terrible for the people of Israel, it would be pretty much terrible for everyone involved. And, as I said, the New York Times, Bret Stephens, or Thomas Friedman, they look at the issue very differently, but they all end up with the same sort of advice at the end for Israel, is that they won effectively on April 13th. And whatever retaliation they have to do, and I agree with you that they've decided to do, and they'll have to do something, but they should really work hard to avoid a broader conflagration and a new war, if you will, that that Israel can't afford, and the region can't afford, really, and the world can't afford. It would have catastrophic consequences for everyone.
Well, I don't know if this would be termed an escalation or just mission fulfillment, but what is your view then on Israel ending this as quickly as possible by means of attempting to root out Hamas in one of its apparent last safe havens, that's Rafah, because until there is a belief that Hamas has been severely crippled such that something like October 7th is never going to happen again, this will persist. So isn't it in everybody's interest for Israel to strike a final blow against Hamas as quickly as possible?
No, because there is, it's not a video game.
I'm not saying it's a video game.
Well, it's not. There's not. Well, it sounds like it when you say it that way. No, an invasion of Rafah, which people with, look, I'm sorry to say that, bring serious military correspondents from Israel and ask them what they think about the possibility of this. Hamas is a political party and a political movement with tens of thousands of supporters amongst Palestinians. Whether you like it or not, you can imagine that. Of course, I don't. But you cannot destroy a movement like that by killing tens of thousands of people, as Israel has. It's not a group like that. It's not a terror group like Al-Qaeda that is hiding in some cave. If you kill everybody in Gaza, there are other people in the West Bank who belong to Hamas and who belong to other terror groups. And you know why they will belong to other terror groups? I'll answer you by Ehud Barak, Israel's most decorated military leader, former prime minister, said. He said, if I was a young Palestinian, I would probably join one of the terror groups. Because that's the reality. Palestinians have lived for decades under occupation. And that is what needs to end.
Well,
that is what needs to end in order for this problem to finish. Sorry, go on.
So we're going to go back to just we're going to everybody puts down their arms and we go through this two-state solution charade. I mean, there's no appetite for that.
Why is it a charade?
Because there's no appetite for
appetite for whom? Who said that?
Well. First and foremost.
In Chicago, it doesn't offend you. There is appetite for it for a lot of people in the Middle East, and there's definitely appetite for it for a lot of people in Israel. Mm-hmm. If they can see that it's possible. Look, here's the thing. This is why the far right and the far left will say the same thing. Yes, it's a very common talking point to say that two-state solution is impossible. There's no way.
I said right now. I mean, if you're the point is with an eye towards ending the hostilities, and what I'm saying is right now. That is years ago. Maybe even just a few years ago when Abraham Accords were being signed, maybe that was more realistic. But right now, it's not particularly realistic politically. What's politically feasible? What's possible? So if that's not possible in the short term right now, and you want to try to end hostilities, then what's the path?
I think, first of all, you spoke about Hamas rejecting a deal for releasing the hostages. That is true. There should be an attempt to get a deal to release the hostages and to end this, and to bring about a ceasefire, and to have a plan. You say that it's not right now possible. Sure, it's not possible right now. Of course, I didn't think it was possible like in 6 months or something. But there should be an attempt to try to think of the day after. So Israel has done this far now. What is the day after for people in Gaza and people in the West Bank? Unfortunately, it's quite terrible now. These fascist parties that are part of Netanyahu's government are running amok in West Bank. They look. I think from the perspective of Israeli national interest, it's very necessary to have a plan for the day after. And you're not going to be able. You say, invasion of Rafah. Well, as I say, you cannot militarily take out Hamas so easily. Because it's a political movement that includes tons of people. It has been degraded as much as you can. The atrocities of October 7th are a historical crime whose responsibility shares by Hamas, of course, and by the Iranian regime, even though they didn't know that was happening on that day, they had armed and funded Hamas for years. There's no doubt about that. But the best revenge against it is attempts to really bring an end to this conflict. Unfortunately, I don't think Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has the best interest of his people in mind. And it's not, just what I think. It's what tons of people in Israel believe. He's a self-serving guy who's not serving his people well. And if Israel goes to elections anytime soon, the people will definitely elect a different leader, and I hope they will enact different policies that will bring peace for the people of Israel and for everybody in the region.
Arash Azizi, senior lecturer in history and poli-sci at Clemson University, contributing writer for The Atlantic, and author of What Iranians Want, Women, Life, Freedom. Arash Azizi, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. All right, coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
At 7:37, of course, they just can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves. The senior editor at NPR, who spoke out against the NPR's journalistic activism, to be generous, suspended. 7:37.
But now let's head into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
7:34, 68 degrees this morning. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says as Republicans work on his impeachment, he's working on advancing the mission of Homeland Security. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall insisting the chamber will hold a trial against the secretary, arguing there will be dangerous consequences if Democrats refuse.
A vote to stop this impeachment, whether it's through tabling it or discharging it, is a vote to keep the border open. It's a vote to tell the families of Laken Riley that we don't care.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is expected to call votes to dismiss 2 articles of impeachment against Mayorkas. British Foreign Secretary David Cameron said moments ago Israel is, quote, making a decision to act, end quote. In response to Iran's missile and drone attack over the weekend, Israel has vowed to respond. Local officials say 3 Russian missiles have slammed into a downtown area of the northern Ukrainian city of Cherniv, hitting an 8th-floor apartment building, killing 14. The first 7 jurors for Donald Trump's New York hush money trial have been chosen after lawyers grilled members of the jury pool about social media postings, political views, and personal lives. 5 Naperville schools were put on lockdown yesterday amid a shooting investigation in the area Tuesday afternoon.
He was just screaming, like, hurry up, I am bleeding, and I think he was scared.
The investigation was centered around a home along Leach Drive where a 22-year-old man was found shot and rushed to a nearby hospital. Police believe the shooting was targeted. A man accused of defacing a Chicago school with anti-Semitic profanity and swastikas. Police say Jared Barnes was arrested and charged with a hate crime and defacement of school property. And United Airlines is saying it lost $124 million in the first quarter, blamed on a 3-week grounding of all Boeing 737 MAX 9 jets after a panel blew off an Alaska Airlines MAX jetliner in January. Bulls in the NBA playoffs tonight. They have a play-in round contest against Atlanta. Cubs had a grand slam from Ian Happ, 4 hits from Nico Horner, and still lost to Arizona, 12-11. White Sox and Royals rained out, doubleheader today. The news, a service of Quick Delivery Service. When you need reliable same-day delivery to clients, Quick Delivery will customize a logistics plan to pick it up and move it safely to its destination. Trust their 40 years of experience for peace of mind. Get a quote at quickdelivery.com. A check of traffic and weather on the way next on AM 560.
Mike Gallagher sees Trump dead on.
The world's on fire, and we have this idiot in the White House to blame. Now, normally a talk show host says things like that, not the Republican nominee for president. But it's where we are, and this is what the left doesn't get, and the Trump haters never recognize. Millions of Americans relate to this and say, you're right, you're right, you're right.
The Mike Gallagher Show, weekdays at 9, right before Dennis Prager at 11 on AM 560.
The Answer.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity's support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976. That's 1-800-990-6976.
If you're an experienced homeowner who's outlived their assets or can no longer afford to pay your parents' housing and medical expenses, you need to call Team Hochberg about a reverse mortgage. Tammy, 73, retired, Social Security income $2,100 a month, living in a $300,000 River Grove home she owned free and clear. Tammy's real estate taxes doubled and had no way of paying off her credit card debt totaling over $90,000. Team Hochberg helped Tammy secure a reverse mortgage, pay her real estate taxes, and over 60% of her credit card debt, which saved her almost 24 G's a year. Let's review. Team Hochberg helped Tammy secure a reverse mortgage to pay her real estate taxes, most of her debt, and increased her cash flow almost $2,000 a month. If you're interested in learning more about reverse mortgages, call Team Hochberg now at 855-563-2843 or visit our website 56david.com. 855-563-2843 or 56david.com. Lower.com, equal housing lender, NMLS 1124061.
Can peace of mind fit into just 3 fruits and 3 veggie supplements? Yes. We start by sourcing the best fruit and vegetable ingredients. We ensure that all our produce meets our rigorous standards in order to give you the highest quality product possible. They are then washed, cut, and put through an advanced vacuum-cooled process that removes the water using pressure. We then take great care in grinding them into a fine powder. These powdered ingredients are then mixed and encapsulated, locking out air and moisture. The capsules are then bottled and shipped right to your door so you can experience your own personal Balance of Nature success story.
I've looked at other supplements out there, and they don't have what Balance of Nature has.
Balance of Nature really was the game changer. I'm serious, it works.
Go to balanceofnature.com and get 35% off plus $10 off any additional sets as a preferred customer by using discount code CHICAGO.
Don't let a cold, sinus infection, or allergies ruin your day. Breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier with Navage. Visit Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, or a store near you.
7:41. Let's get an update on the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time is a service of McGrath Lexus in Westmont and Chicago. Experienced the next level of excellence at McGrath Lexus in nearby Westmont and downtown Chicago. When you do the math, you choose McGrath. View new and pre-owned inventory online at McGrathLexus.com. Tri-State jammed up solid northbound 294 between the Mylong Bridge and I-88 due to an earlier accident. You also have a disabled vehicle blocking a left lane northbound just south of 31st. On the interior expressways, Bishop Ford jammed solid into the Dan Ryan. The Ryan now over 30 minutes. 95th into the Burn Circle interchange, 33 minutes right now. 63 on the inbound Stevenson to DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Cloudy, windy, cooler, high 65. In our QC Kinetics Weather Center, 68, mostly cloudy, officially at O'Hare. Your next news update is at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So NPR's got a new boss, just like the old boss, same as the old boss. And the earth just keeps on spinning. And NPR keeps on pumping out propaganda, subsidized by me and you and all American taxpayers. Uri Berliner, senior editor for NPR, does business news. Did this podcast with Barry Weiss over at the Free Press last week and wrote an op-ed talking about NPR's lack of journalistic integrity, frankly, and there's no other way to describe it. Their reliance on mainly Adam Schiff to cover the Russian collusion allegations that bedeviled Trump for first 2 years of his administration, and turned out to be false. And nary a mea culpa was offered by NPR. Mm-hmm. The Hunter Biden laptop story, which they were dutiful in their contributions to its suppression prior to the 2020 election, and just other such examples where NPR is not a journalistic enterprise. It is the comm shop for the state that finances the state that finances it, depending on who's in charge, as long as their fellow travelers are in charge.
Yeah, he basically said that the NPR is the DNC in disguise.
I got so frustrated with what I saw was the lack of different perspectives in our coverage. What I found was 87 registered Democrats on our editorial staff, 0 Republicans. Something's gone wrong here. Where if we're really thinking about diversity and our coverage, the response was it wasn't like wow. It wasn't like we're going to change this or try and address this somehow. It was just more like, wow, that's weird.
And upon the announcement of NPR's new CEO, Catherine Maher, he said, we're looking for a leader right now who's going to be unifying and bring more people into the tent and have brought a perspective on sort of what America's all about. And this seems to be the opposite of that, Miss Maher. Oh, she's the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. There's no question that she's the opposite of that, as all these tweets of hers that have been unearthed and are in circulation now would indicate. For his moments of candor, Mr. Berliner has now been suspended by NPR. I mean, they just can't help themselves. So, suppression and opposing viewpoints, and sidelining opposing viewpoints. That's the problem at NPR. Somebody calls attention to it, they get suspended. Do you understand the irony of no, they don't, and they don't care? And none other than Jonathan Turley raised an issue that, frankly, congressional Republicans should be raising. It's been raised before. It's been raised before for decades. But Republicans never do anything about it, to their discredit.
To simply confirm what all of us knew, that that NPR has become unrelentingly partisan, and they've engaged in this type of advocacy journalism. But at the end of the day, Martha, it doesn't matter what the slant is or whether it's slanted. We need to have a discussion in this country about state-funded media. This NPR is indistinguishable from media outlets like MSNBC or CNN, but they don't receive these subsidies. The question is why the United States, every taxpayer, should subsidize NPR. The NPR audience is overwhelmingly wealthy, or they're certainly better off than most Americans. They're overwhelmingly white, and they're overwhelmingly liberal. About 70% identify themselves as liberals, and yet they expect every taxpayer to support them. So the question is, as a country, is this really what we want to do? Do we want the government funding particular media platforms over others?
Yeah, we know there's been a lot of push.
NPR's new CEO, this Catherine Maher, just to give you a little flavor.
Real hoot.
I know that hysteric white women voice. I was taught to do it. I've done it. It's a disturbing recognition. While I don't recall ever using it to deliberately expose another person to immediate physical harm on my own cognizance, it's not impossible. That is whiteness. Huh? And I'm white, so my hair doesn't automatically carry with it the freight of my race, worth, and everyone else's encoded assumptions and biases. I mean, sure, looting is counterproductive, but it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression founded on treating people's ancestors as private property. Lots of jokes about leaving the U.S., and I get it, but as someone with a cis white mobility privilege, I'm thinking I'm staying and investing in ridding ourselves of this specter of tyranny. Of course, the specter of tyranny is Trump. So you can expect him to get a fair shake throughout the next 6 months and into his second term. I mean, yeah, this is what Yuri Berliner is talking about when he says, this selection for CEO seems to be the opposite of what NPR needs. Yeah, it's the opposite.
And she went when she put in her statement about his, suspension. She wrote, NPR is independent, beholden to no party, and without commercial interests. Oh, really?
Right. It's beholden to no party. It's beholden to a specific ideology that is most closely affiliated with the New Marxist Party. It's beholden to identitarianism, which is the New Marxism practiced by the New Marxist Party, which used to be called the Democrat Party. But nice try, Catherine.
312-642-5600, turnkey.pro. Answer line 64636. Type in DA, then a quick comment. I think it's time we stopped funding NPR, don't you?
Long past time. Yes. Long past time. And it's also, too, it's long past time that there is more full-throated defenses for free speech and a free press. And this is something that some on the left once upon a time believed in, and they don't now. They're a censorious group. Catherine Maher among them, clearly. And, you may want to swivel your head and look around the Western world, because it's getting pretty dicey when it comes to free expression. It's not just for the usual totalitarian suspects anymore. You had the NatCon, National Conservatism Conference in Brussels shut down.
Oh, that's right.
That was shut down. I saw Rod Dreher posting about it because Nigel Farage was going to speak and some others, and the mayor there of the community in Brussels. We had to close that down, the National Conservatism Conference in Brussels, because it was creating a public disturbance. Police gave attendees 15 minutes to exit the venue. Mm-hmm. So that's in Belgium. Oh, that's where the world headquarters of the EU, right?
Well, that's right. Yeah.
That's central office EU in Brussels. Mm-hmm. Yeah, epicenter of power in Europe. Shutting down a conservative conference because a British politician was going to speak. And some other conservatives. Oh, heavens. In Brazil, we've been talking about the Twitter files of Brazil and what's going on there. It's getting pretty chippy, according to Michael Schellenberger, who's on the ground there. He tweeted out a couple of days ago, Brazil should terrify you. He said that after that Supreme Court justice moved to threaten to shut down Twitter if Musk didn't abide their censorship directives. He said it seemed like things were calming after newspapers editorialized against censorship. The head of the Brazilian Bar Association gave a strong statement in support of freedom of speech. And the president of Brazil's Supreme Court said the conflict between Brazil and X, Twitter, was just a big game, people talking a big game. But he said that changed. Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, Lula, as they call him, this is the guy that ousted Bolsonaro with, arguably, it has been argued, the help of our deep state agencies. Lula is proposing proposed that the government has the power to arrest anyone for lying. He was going to criminalize lying. And who is the eye of the beholder on who's telling the truth and who's lying? The government. Schellenberger writing about this. Thousands of Workers' Party activists took to X yesterday to demand that he, Schellenberger, be arrested for things he said during his testimony before the Brazilian Senate. And under Lula's criminalization of lying, he potentially could be. The head of X in Brazil announced they quit for fear of safety. He writes to Schellenberger, I'm not afraid for myself. I fear neither the devil nor de Moraes, the Supreme Court justice, rapidly turning himself into Brazil's dictator. I'm taking all necessary precautions to ensure that I can leave Brazil safely and without being arrested. You can help by sharing this video and spreading the word about what's happening here. And yet what's happening in Brazil terrifies me nonetheless. I love this country and its people and fear that it's on the cusp of totalitarianism. A significant share of the left wants to incarcerate their political enemies. Sound familiar? Respected Brazilian journalists say with a straight face that the government must engage in mass censorship in order to protect democracy. Brazil is everything George Orwell feared and worse. I would be less worried if Brazil were small and irrelevant, but it's not. Brazil, of course, is the largest and most important nation in Latin America. Just this week, top Brazilian government representatives were in China talking about how China is a model for Brazil. Brazil is an inspiration for European totalitarians who have weaponized government intel agencies to spread disinformation about their political enemies and are implementing a censorship system to control the entire internet. This is Gestapo stuff here. This is serious business. Schellenberger's right. Word is that Musk is capitulating. Right? That Musk is going to abide the Brazilian Supreme Court judge, even though they called him a brutal dictator. X informed Brazil's Supreme Federal Tribunal, and this de Moraes guy, in a letter that it would not challenge a long list of censorship demands issued this month. That's Reuters reporting it on Monday. So that's a significant change in position because basically, as Musk sort of predicted, he was on the cusp of having his operation in Brazil shuttered by the government. I think you want to take judicial notice of these developments. And this is another real point of distinction between free minds and free markets-oriented conservatives and the fascistic, since I love that term so much.
Yeah, I had fascist last night too.
Fascistic left, and that's what fascism is, by the way. State subordination of all private institutions. All things run through the state. That's a leftist philosophy. And you're seeing it in action all over the West, including in this country, including in Downers Grove, since we kicked off the show with that. Dan and Amy, Chicago's Morning Answer.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Do the proposed tax and estate planning changes have you concerned about your future? The time to prepare is right now. Take advantage of a no-obligation conversation with a member of the Wealth Management Group team. It's a complimentary conversation focused solely on you, your goals, and how changes can impact your family's future. Call 833-WMG-PLAN or visit investwithwmg.com.
Securities and financial planning offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member FINRA SIPC.
Under the fertile soil that feeds our crops and below the backyard gardens in our cities and towns, underground utility lines carry critical services. They also carry potential danger. By connecting you with utility companies who mark where their lines are buried on your property, Julie has been protecting Illinois residents for 50 years. Contact JulieBeforeYouDig.com and stay safe.
Julie beforeyoudig.com.
You know, today, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries, and maybe it'll get you a quarter tank of gas. But you know what it'll get you, though? For just $20 a month, you get unlimited talk and text and plenty of 5G data from my friends, my cell phone company, a veteran-owned company, Pure Talk. Make the switch today, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Now, choose a wireless company that shares your values. Just dial pound 250, say the keyword save now. Make the switch today. Pound 250, keyword save now from Pure Talk.
And Doug.
Being a spokesperson's easy, kid. Just say customize and save with Liberty Mutual.
Customize and save with Liberty Bibberty.
That's not it.
Liberty Mutual. Liberty Musical.
Nope.
Liberty, line.
It's 2 words. Liberty Mutual.
Got it. Don't not pay at libertymuttnoodle.com.
Wow. I guess I'll just do it.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com. That's a wrap.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates.
AM 560. The Answer.
All right, coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
We are going to be treated at 8:08 to the brilliant legal mind of one Professor Richard Epstein. We'll get his take on what's happening in Manhattan with President Trump and talk a little bit about his latest efforts in conjunction with environmental groups to stop Obamaland in its proposed vision on the lakefront. That's all at 8:08.
But now let's head into that newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
The administrator for Dalton and Thornton Township has been indicted. The new leader of Rainbow Push steps down. Bulls host the Hawks in a play-in game, and the Cubs lose in extras. WIND Chicago News Time, 8 o'clock.
He doesn't have to sit in court this morning. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. It is an off day in New York at former President Trump's criminal trial. Jury selection will resume tomorrow. What does he think of the 7 jurors chosen so far?
I'll let you know in about 2 months. I'll let you know after the trial.
A trial he calls political persecution as he faces charges of falsifying records after 2016 payments to keep an alleged affair he denies quiet.
Every legal pundit said there should be no trial.
He said that while campaigning after court in New York City. Now President Biden will go to Pittsburgh for the second of a 3-day trip to the key battleground state of Pennsylvania.
Framing himself as middle-class Joe, head-to-head with country club Trump.
Look at the economy from Mar-a-Lago, where he and his rich friends embraced the failed trickle-down policies that have failed working families for more than 40 years.
So all this follows the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell yesterday cooling expectations of rate cuts this year, interest rate cuts this year, citing stubborn inflation.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. In 4 hours, senators will be sworn in as jurors for Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, impeached by House Republicans accused of ignoring laws allowing record illegal immigration. But the Senate's Democratic Majority Leader may hold a vote to dismiss the case instead of holding a trial. GOP Senator John Kennedy tells Fox.
Senator Schumer says, this is just a policy disagreement. There are no high crimes and misdemeanors. How does he know? He hasn't seen the evidence.
Israel is still readying that response to Iran's weekend attack.
British Foreign Secretary David Cameron is in Israel today, admitting it's clear Israeli leaders are making a decision to act.
We hope they do so in a way that does as little to escalate this as possible.
Iran's warned of a massive and harsh response to even what it calls the tiniest Israeli invasion.
Fox's Jonathan Savage is up to at least 14 Ukrainians dead in a new Russian missile attack today. America's listening to
8:02 on AM 560, The Answer. Good morning. I'm Mike Scott, and topping our news this morning, 3 men were wounded overnight in a drive-by shooting in the Englewood neighborhood. Chicago police say a 51-year-old man was shot in the back of the head and transported to Mount Sinai Hospital, the most seriously wounded in critical condition, and there is no one in custody. A Northwest Side alderman has filed a complaint against the head of the independent agency that oversees Chicago police after she spoke with many media outlets about the fatal shooting of Dexter Reed Jr. after he first shot at police. Alderman Nicholas Pizzato sent that letter to the Office of Inspector General, highly critical of Andrea Kirsten, chief administrator of COPA. A woman is pleading guilty to murder in the brutal killing of a pregnant Chicago teen in 2019. Clarissa Figueroa entered the guilty plea yesterday and was sentenced to 50 years in prison. The family of the teen says it was time for justice in the case.
It's time for them to move forward. And again, there's nothing that's ever going to change the reality of the violent actions.
Figueroa and her daughter Desiree were accused of strangling 19-year-old Marlon Ochoa Lopez and then cutting her baby boy from her womb after luring her to their Southwest Side home. The baby died after several weeks of intensive care. Chicago sports. The Bulls take on Atlanta tonight in the playoffs. Cubs, 12-11 losers to the Diamondbacks, while the White Sox and Kansas City wiped out because of rain. They'll have a doubleheader today. The news, a service of Turnkey.pro. Turnkey's real-time threat hunting defends you, your employees, and your customers from vulnerable cyber attacks. Turnkey has solutions to protect your business. Visit Turnkey.pro. 8:04, time for the AM 560 Business Beat, a service of Signature Bank. Visit signaturebank.bank for all your commercial banking needs. Now, the latest from the Fox Business Network.
I'm Liz Clayman, and this is the Fox Business Report.
Shares of Travelers companies are under pressure in pre-market trading after the property and casualty insurer missed expectations for profit and net premiums written. Catastrophe losses grew 33% to $712 million, while underwriting gains jumped 57% to $577 million. The stock is up about 17% year to date. And shares of Eli Lilly are up in the pre-market on positive news about its sleep apnea drug, marketed as Zepbound. The pharmaceutical maker says it provided considerable relief to overweight or obese people who had obstructive sleep apnea or episodes of stopped breathing during sleep. The results from a pair of year-long clinical trials could offer a new treatment option for some 20 million Americans. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Lillian Wu, invested in you.
Brandon Tatum wants more people to step up.
I just really wish more people like me would speak out more and be more confident about it. I know a lot of black people that think just like me, but man, they just won't say. They will never tell anybody. It's not conducive for them. But if only more black men knew that other black men agree with them and that they're not isolated and they're alone in their thoughts of saying, something ain't right here.
The Officer Tatum Show, weeknights at 8, right before Sean Hannity at 10 on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies supplements, changing the world one life at a time.
2 weeks after I had been taken, after I had started taking them, I told the wife, I said, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm 20 years old. Ever since, I just stayed on it. And I'm not the most educated guy, but anyhow, I'm not the dumbest guy in the area. And I do know what they got in there, just reading on it and everything. I'm pleased with it. Anybody I speak to, I convince them right away that give it a try.
Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com and sign up as a new preferred customer. And for a limited time, get 35% off your first order, plus $10 off any additional sets with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this special offer by using discount code Chicago.
You know, since 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation has been committed to supporting our nation's first responders and veterans. They support America's heroes like U.S. Army Major Jonathan Turnbull. Now, Major Turnbull sustained devastating injuries at the hands of an ISIS suicide bomber. Tunnel to Towers gave him a specially adapted smart home designed for his needs. Join Tunnel to Towers. They're hoping all of us will donate $11 a month so this great work continues. Their website, the letter T, the number 2, the letter T.org.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
It's 8:08. Let's get an update on the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time is a service of Del Bacchio Marchetti Group of Properties, Christie's International Real Estate. With over $800 million in sales, you'll get the most value for your home. 708-828-0000, 708-828-0000. Eden's 25, Lake Cook Road to the junction, the Kennedy, 90 minutes from O'Hare into the Burns Circle interchange. The Ike, an hour 15 from 390 into the old post office, while the Stevenson at 60 minutes, 355 into DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. Now your official Chicagoland weather forecast in our QC Kinetics Weather Center, Steve Williams.
Today, mostly cloudy, windy, and cooler. A brief shower or two. The high today, 65. Partly cloudy tonight, low 48. Clouds, a shower in spots tomorrow. The high at 61. Mostly sunny, breezy on Friday. The high Friday at 58. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560. The Answer.
68 right now. Next news, 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So the Fisher case before the High Court. Oral arguments. This is related to 1512 C2 of Sarbanes-Oxley, the official or the criminal interruption of a official proceeding. That is the statute that federal prosecutors have used against many of the January 6th defendants and President Trump. So this is an important case. This exchange between Justice Neil Gorsuch and representing the Biden administration is Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar. This exchange is important, and we want to get our next guest to weigh in on it, since we have one of the most brilliant legal minds joining us, Richard Epstein, momentarily. Take a listen to Gorsuch's challenge to the application of this federal statute to J6 defendants and, by extension, President Trump.
If I might, so what does that mean for the breadth of this statute? Would a sit-in that disrupts a trial or access to a federal courthouse qualify? Would a heckler in today's audience qualify, or at the State of the Union address? Would pulling a fire alarm before a vote qualify for 20 years in federal prison?
There are multiple elements of the statute that I think might not be satisfied by those hypotheticals, and it relates to the point I was going to make to the Chief Justice about the breadth of this statute. The kind of built-in limitations are the things that I think would potentially suggest that many of those things wouldn't be something the government could charge or prove as 1512c2 beyond a reasonable doubt, would include the fact that the actus reus does require obstruction, which we understand to be a meaningful interference. So that means that if you have some minor disruption or delay or some minimal outburst, we don't think it falls within the actus reus to begin with.
My outbursts require the court to reconvene after the proceeding has been brought back into line, or the pulling of the fire alarm, the vote has to be rescheduled, or the protest outside of a courthouse makes it inaccessible for a period of time. Are those all federal felonies subject to 20 years in prison?
So with some of them, it would be necessary to show nexus. So with respect to the protest outside the courthouse, we'd have to show that, yes, they were aiming at the proceeding.
Yeah, they were trying to stop the proceeding.
Yes, and then we'd also have to be able to prove that they acted corruptly, and this sets a stringent mens rea. It's not even just the mere intent to obstruct. We have to show that also, but we have to show that they had corrupt intent in acting in that way.
We went around that tree yesterday.
I know. I heard the argument yesterday, but I guess what I would say is that to the extent that your hypotheticals are pressing on the idea of a peaceful protest, even one that's quite disruptive, it's not clear to me that the government would be able to show that each of those protesters had corrupt intent.
Protest that actually obstructs and impedes an official proceeding for an indefinite period would not be covered?
Not necessarily. We would just have to have the evidence of intent, and that's a high bar.
They intend to do it all right.
Yeah, they intend to do it all right. So when Jamal Bowman pulled that fire alarm and Congress had to be evacuated, he intended to do it. He didn't confuse it with the door handle or whatever nonsense he came up with. And so the vote had to be rescheduled. That's the example, one of the examples that Gorsuch is referring to. Sit-ins at a trial. So the Kavanaugh protests, disrupting a nomination hearing. Hecklers in the crowd. Think of all the pro-Hamas protesters disrupting all kinds of events, canceling all kinds of events.
Oh, yeah.
The BLM protests, disrupting, canceling events. And this, this corrupt intent. Well, I would have also challenged her. So give me an example where something like the examples I provided occurs where there wasn't corrupt intent, meaning intent to disrupt, intent to prevent. What was it? What was it otherwise in all of these actual real world incidents? And so distinguish that from those charged with federal crimes under this provision of federal statute that are facing 20 years in prison when they want for wandering through the Capitol. Some not even in the Capitol, on the grounds, and did otherwise not commit a violent act. It'll be very interesting to see how 1512 survives or doesn't when the court renders its opinion on this. For more on this and other matters, we are going to talk about the Obama Presidential Center in Jackson Park as well. And by the way, but before we bring Professor Epstein on, I just want you to think about this. You're about to hear from Professor Richard Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
He turns 81 years old today.
I know. It's his birthday, and we love birthdays here at AM 560.
Please don't sing. And Joe Biden is also 81 years old. So think about Joe Biden at 81 and Richard Epstein at 81 and just enjoy the distinction. I'll just say that. Professor Richard Epstein is the James Parker Hall Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus of Law and Senior Lecturer at the University of Chicago. Professor Epstein, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Happy birthday.
Thank you for the happy birthday. As you get older, each year becomes more precious.
Well, we're glad you're spending your time with us today.
Yes.
It's a birthday.
Right. You can have a birthday cocktail after this interview. So that exchange with Gorsuch and the federal government's lawyer on 1512, with the implications it has on so many of these J6 cases and potentially Trump's cases as well. Give us your read on that exchange.
Well, my view about this from the beginning has been they've always charged things far too heavily because they're largely political trials. And every time you hear Alvin Bragg or Letitia James or even Merrick Garland say, we follow the law, just the law, and only the law, you know that they're doing precisely the opposite. It's ridiculous to take financial situations where you're trying to bill people millions of dollars and apply it to situations where the other statutes, which are directly applicable, having to do with entry, which is unlawful or unpermissible, have much more restrictions in terms of the proof of the liability and, in fact, much lower sanctions. So I regard this as utterly irresponsible. A prosecutor on a case of this moment has to be very sure of their legal theories. And what they're doing in this case is pushing it as far and as hard as they possibly can. And what they say is, what do we have to lose, is their attitude. We go for this stuff. We want to get 20 years in prison for 4 minutes walking inside the building. We're going to basically take every ambiguous effort with respect to the use of force, never knowing who pushed whom when, and put it up to 20 years. This is utterly unforgivable in the way in which one ought to be running a justice system. It's not uncommon. Mr. Brass, it takes a routine kind of case of financial integrity, not anything having to do with the steamy sides of matter, and he breaks it up into 34 causes of action and says, I could get this guy for 50 years, but I'm only implying the law. You got prosecutorial discretion. And the most important thing for prosecutorial discretion is to make sure that when you get a case of great moment, that your legal theory is rock solid and your evidence is rock solid. And in this particular case, they're going hell for leather. The argument is, if I lose on this thing, I may be disgraced and perhaps influenced, but I could get the same cases I had before. So they treat this as a no-win prosecution. But it may be no win for them, but it's certainly a desperate prosecution for everybody else on the other side. And what it does is it takes the entire criminal apparatus of the United States and calls it into question. So what you do is you have a crisis of legitimacy because you get over pushing on all of these kinds of cases. It's a very, very dangerous type of situation. And I think the only thing that you have to say, they should have never done it. And I think the Supreme Court will slap them down. In my view, it could even be 9-0.
But that slap it down will come in what form? I mean, will they declare that provision of Sarbanes-Oxley unconstitutional, or will they just say this is a misapplication?
It's only going to be the latter. I mean, surely obstruction of justice can take place. Mm-hmm. And if you start, shredding commercial documents in order to clear your various kinds of offenses, as far as I'm concerned, that's very serious and ought to be treated accordingly. Mm-hmm. But the word corruptly means that you sort of do it without any kind of legal justification, right? And in all the cases that you saw of sit-ins and so forth, there was no argument whatsoever that you can do it. This is not the case of somebody entering into the Capitol to save somebody who's burning or in serious medical condition and trying to take them out. Those kinds of removals, even if they're trespass, would be justified on some kind of a doctrine of necessity to save the life and health of other individuals, and therefore would not be deemed corruptly. But the burden is upon the government, let's put your point in more technical terms, is the moment you should show a deliberate intention to disrupt procedure, the burden then has to be on the other individual to prove that he had a legitimate motive. Otherwise, the simple proposition is an intent to disrupt various kinds of proceedings will be regarded as corrupt, right? And so they are basically pushing this thing so far. It's just not a very wise way in which to proceed. They cannot win this particular case. As far as I'm concerned, they're just going way, way over the top.
Well, that and by the way, I'm sure that's the same sort of in-depth legal analysis we would have got from Joe Biden, who's also an attorney. Yeah, thank gosh we have you in the absence of Joe Biden. So that necessarily means that there are going to be all sorts of convictions overturned.
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're over-pleading on the obstruction ground. As I said, I mean, in these particular cases, you have fairly stringent requirements, and all they can show about these guys, they're walking in the building, and somebody bumps into somebody else. The facts in this particular case are extremely strong for the defendant, and it's just tiresome to constantly hear people who are, supposedly the forces of law announce that they have no political motivation. They're only doing this to enforce the law. The most important doctrine to remember in this particular case is that of selective prosecution. The government always has some degree of prosecution. If they select people for political reasons, it's against the FBI manuals, against everything else. That's just being done in all of these cases. Look, I'll give you another analysis. You want to find some really ugly stuff? There were people who managed to occupy for long periods of time government facilities in Seattle and Portland. Willful destruction of property, right? And they never got charged. They were all released on their own cognizance. It's the asymmetry. People may not know what's right or what's wrong in all cases, but what they do understand is unfair treatment, where you really slam your enemies and you let your political friends go free. That's exactly what has happened in this particular kind of case. So I don't think it will stand. I think it's going to be, the whole thing will be blown up. And indeed, I mean, I can tell you what are the charges make that some sense, but in every case, even if there's some guilt, like with Mar-a-Lago, there are greater guilts on the other side, like Hillary Clinton, and the sanctions that they're asking for are much too heavy. And so the prosecutorial discretion is going in overdrive. And my view is it's likely to elect Donald Trump as president of the United States, because when the president starts talking about we have to make this nation safe for democracy, what he really should be saying is you have to make this state safe for democracy by keeping me out of office. Because I'm managing to violate every particular norm that you could imagine.
I wanted to get the latest on your litigation in conjunction with Protect the Parks on the Obama presidential complex. You are pursuing a rehearing in federal circuit court. Where does this stand, and what's your assessment of your own case at this point?
Well, I mean, we've had a thundering stream of big debates, and every case that we've lost, I thought, was essentially very badly argued and very badly decided by the bench. So if you're just predicting to be more of same, given the enormous political clout that Obama seems to be able to exert over the entire legal system. But if you look at the opinions and try to figure out what's going on, the first thing you should do is look at the statement that the Obama Presidential Center writes when they're actually forced to confront this thing by my column in the Chicago Tribune with Michael Ratcliffe being put in the Wall Street Journal best on the stuff. And what they just do is they take a page out of their manual and they say, the Obama Center is designed to do everything that's just wonderful. Just to give you one kind of practical illustration, we don't know what the cost of this thing is. And it turns out, as best I can estimate from the very fragmentary information that they have available, they're at least $1 billion in the hole in trying to put this. And we're told by the court that we're suing as third-party beneficiaries. It's just an outright falsehood. The first thing we said in our complaint is this is not a third-party beneficiary case. We're not suing on this contract. We're saying this contract should have never been made, and it's a breach of public trust. It's a completely different kind of argument, and Judge Wood just completely mangles the thing and says that's not what it's at. You open this stuff up and you look underneath, well, what are you going to find? You're going to find that it turns out their estimates as of September 2021 left them in the hole by at least $1 billion. They had a building that was going to cost $700 million, and they had nothing to pay for it. And they had an endowment fund of $470 million, and they put $1 million in it and said, well, we satisfied our endowment. But they have to fund all of these things. Right. And they have no way to raise the money at this particular.
Well, one of the other things is one of the other things, though, too. It seems to me is that's unconscionable. So the contract is unenforceable. Is the acquiring the land that you suggest is probably worth $10 million an acre for $10.
Yeah, I mean, but
Who gets a deal like that?
Only one person, as we know. And what are they putting in the center? We don't even know the floor plan. There's said to be floors devoted to the residents of the Obamas. There's going to be a convention center. There's going to be a cafeteria. There's going to be a souvenir shop at one point or another. And there's probably going to be office spaces. So my guess is if you could actually see the plan, say maybe 25% of it is devoted to public exhibits. I mean, I have no idea what's going on because the man who always prizes public transparency just basically plays rope-a-dope and doesn't reveal any kind of information about anything that's going on. You look at the logistics of this building and they're a nightmare because you have only one entrance and it has to service 4 different functions. They have the huge security apparatus that they have to run. They got all their employees. They got all their suppliers and all their customers coming in through the same door. If they put it elsewhere, it would have been a very much more attractive building. He designed a building for them, world class, which they didn't look at because what Judge Wood said, we don't have any power to stop this. And what we did 1,000 times is, Judge, you're right. The federal government doesn't have to tell them they have to run the project. It doesn't tell them they could locate it somewhere else. But the whole purpose of an environmental statute is to say if there's certain things that you can't do because they've been done well elsewhere, you can block it and then let them decide what to do thereafter. She says the original project may have said we're examining the Obama Presidential Center in Jackson Park, but no, they changed the rules 15 months later and say all we're doing is looking at the road work at the edge of the park. And they say, well, the only way that you can handle this monstrosity in the middle is to essentially shrink the park and to widen the road. And then, of course, it just takes longer and longer. In her opinion, she said, well, they estimate October 2025. By the time the opinion was published, the date was now February, March, or April of 2026. You look at the building, it's a kind of a standing joke that we all have, is there are always the cranes there, but you never see them moving. Then the next day they're in a different position, so you know that they have to move. And so my wife drives by and she looks at it. She said, and no windows in this building. What's going on?
So ugly.
Well, it's beyond ugly. Because what happens, they have no idea. What they do is they give you all these close-ups of people walking on the lawns in front of it, but they put it in the middle of the midway so as to have this spectacle. And what it looks like is it's a fortification to prevent aliens from landing on the shores of Lake Michigan and taking over the city.
And where are people going to park?
They will put a parking place. No, I think the real question is partly that, are they going to come? They could park at the Museum of Science and Industry, and they have to build this parking place for their employees and so forth. But they will have, I think, 375 spaces, and there'll probably be spaces for 100 people in the public. Nobody is going to come there and drive. They'll take some kind of other vehicle, or they'll go to the museum. And in terms of business to Hyde Park, if there's one customer out of 100 that walks from the situation in the OPC to any of the restaurants in Hyde Park, it will be a minor miracle. They keep on boosting the huge economic stimulus it would give. And the great tragedy is that they put this thing west of Washington Park. They could have put it on land that was not public trust land. They could have had a glorious building. They could have had really nice access to the Green and the Red Line and to the Line Expressway and Martin Luther King Drive. And what they did is they put it into a place where it becomes utterly inaccessible, and it will not be any kind of stimulation whatsoever for the community that it's supposed to serve. This thing is a travesty from start to finish. And what Obama Center should really do is say, well, we may not have to disclose this stuff because we've given this protection, but this is what our building looks like. This is what our budget looks like. Are we on time? Are we over budget? They won't reveal a thing. Valerie Chadwick, all she does is she takes the publicity and answers all the specific charge with sentences that begin, our focus through this legal journey has been to protect the interests of our community. Blather,
Right. Blather. Well, because of the subtext is, we want what we want, when and where we want it, and if you don't like it, so what? And that's well, but do check out Professor Epstein's op-ed in the Chicago Tribune as well. James Freeman in the Wall Street Journal picked it up and discussed it as well. Professor Richard Epstein, James Parker Hall, Distinguished Service Professor Emeritus of Law and Senior Lecturer at the University of Chicago. 81 and sharp as ever. Professor Epstein, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure.
And have a blessed birthday. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer, they took a trolley. We'll explain, but now let's head into the newsroom. Here is Mike Scott.
It's 8:30 on AM 560, The Answer. Local officials say 3 Russian missiles have slammed into the downtown area of the northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv, hitting an 8th-floor apartment building, killing at least 14. Jury selection process resumes Thursday after 7 jurors were selected on Tuesday for Donald Trump's New York City trial. After trial, Trump stopped by a neighborhood bodega afterwards, saying his so-called hush money trial is really about keeping him off the campaign trail.
This is all politics. This is coming out of the White House. And, it makes me campaign locally, and that's okay.
Meantime, the House has sent the Senate articles of impeachment for the head of Homeland Security, the first cabinet member to be impeached in over 100 years.
All persons are commanded to keep silent on pain of imprisonment while the House of Representatives is exhibiting to the Senate of the United States articles of impeachment against Alejandro Nicolas Mayorkas.
Democrats are expected to quickly vote to either table or dismiss the matter, with all 100 senators expected to be sworn in later today. 3 men were wounded in a drive-by shooting in the Englewood neighborhood Tuesday night. Chicago police saying the 51-year-old man was shot in the back of the head and most critically transported to Mount Sinai Hospital. No one in custody. Area 1 detectives are investigating. A death investigation continues after the body of a man was found in Lake Michigan near Lincoln Park. The discovery made yesterday in the water near the 1900 block of DuSable Lakeshore Drive. Chicago sports. Bulls open the playoffs with a play-in round contest against Atlanta tonight. Cubs had a grand slam from Ian Happ Nico Horner had 4 hits, and they still lost to Arizona 12-11. And yesterday's game between the White Sox and KC was postponed because of rain. There's a doubleheader today. Blackhawks lost to Vegas 3-1. They will wrap up a sorry season tomorrow night against the LA Kings. The news, a service of True Green. True Green is the easiest and most affordable way to get a beautiful lawn. All you have to do is water and mow. And to top it off, when you sign up for an annual plan by April 20th, you get 1 application free. Call or visit truegreen.com today. A check of traffic and weather is on the way next on AM 560.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Hey, business owners, are you wondering how to grow your business? Do you need cash flow and a ready source for financing? Well, Signature Bank can help. Hi, Mike Gallagher here to let you know that Signature Bank's loan decisions are made locally by a team who knows your name, cares about your business, and is invested in your success. When you need advice about your business or even have a question, Signature Bank is there to help. There are no handoffs or call centers. This is a team that wants to get to know you and your business. That's why Signature Bank in Chicago is my bank. That's right. I'm a customer. When I call, someone picks up the phone on the other end. And with Signature Bank, I can securely bank anywhere, anytime. Reach out to my friends at Signature Bank. Call 773-467-5630. That's 773-467-5630. Or visit them online at signaturebank.bank. Signaturebank.bank. Your business could be Signature Bank's next success story. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-353-2973 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-353-2973. That's 800-353-2973. What do you have to lose? Call 800-353-2973. Again, 800-353-2973.
Chicagoland agrees. McGrath Lexus is the overwhelming choice of luxury vehicle shoppers. Their unparalleled team of sales consultants expertly help you navigate their immense inventory to arrive at the perfect vehicle for you. With 2 convenient state-of-the-art dealerships in downtown Chicago and in Westmont, they offer 2 times the selection and 2 times the discounts. And right now, McGrath Lexus is offering a premium for your current vehicle. It will never be worth more. Make this the year you enjoy the luxury of Lexus as only McGrath can offer. Your McGrath experience will take Lexus ownership to a whole new level. Do not deny yourself this privilege. You deserve it. Visit one of our 2 McGrath Lexus dealerships in downtown Chicago or in Westmont, or visit us online at McGrathLexus.com. Because
when you do the math, you choose McGrath.
.836. Let's get a check of the roads. Team Hochberg Traffic Center time. Inbound Edens, 24 Lake Cook Road to the junction. The Kennedy, 90 full minutes O'Hare into the Burns Circle interchange. The Ike inbound, 65 minutes. Inbound from Manheim to the old post office. Delays on the Stevenson stop and go from Harlem to Kedzie. And as you're traveling there, 66 minutes into DuSable Lakeshore Drive. I-55 has a car fire with a right lane blocked northbound on 55 between Renwick Road and Route 126. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. In our QC Kinetics Weather Center, cloudy, windy, and cooler for the majority of the day. maybe a brief shower, high 65. Currently, some light rain to heavy rain falling across the area, 62 officially at O'Hare, 69 at Midway. Your next news update is at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Game on. Good morning, Amy here. Dan is gone for this morning. He had a very important meeting. So when I say game on, I'm not talking about the WNBA or the draft that happened. I'm talking about the CTU. They kicked off contract talks yesterday with leaders officially laying out their demands. And this one's going to be different this year. Stacey Davis Gates, CTU president, leaning on her relationship between the union and Mayor Johnson.
This is a brand new Chicago that we are engaging in, and the transition report from the mayor that we have now, that's where our contract proposals emanate from.
And they have 700 contract proposals in all. And with more on this and help us break it down, I should say, we welcome back to the program Paul Vallis, policy advisor now for IllinoisPolicy.org. As you know, former candidate for mayor and former CEO of the CPS. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Amy.
Fine. So what did you, what I read from your inside scoop, which was reported by NBC5, they want a 9% pay hike as well as $2,000 newcomer package for asylum seeker students. What does that mean? Can we start with that issue first?
Well, look, clearly the district has been losing enrollment in dramatic numbers, and plus the union support for sanctuary cities and unlimited migration. So this is, I think this is part of their effort to capture that constituency and to fill the school district's ranks. I think half the schools are far from their enrollment levels, and a large number of the schools have only a small percentage of their seats filled. So clearly they're embracing the sanctuary city concept. It's a way to increase their enrollment after losing enrollment for about 20 consecutive years. Look, this contract is really all about they talk about advancing the social agenda. They're talking about housing, incidentally, including in the proposal is housing for teachers, subsidized housing for teachers. But what Stacey Davis Gates really wants is she wants more members, higher pay, less work, less accountability, and less school choice. That's the bottom line. That's what they want, and that's where they're ultimately going to end up.
Well, this 2,000 newcomer package, are they just going to cut a check to the kids' parents, or what does that include? That's just so bizarre. Are they going to give them, Visa cards or EBT cards?
If you look at their 170 proposals, it's littered with proposals just like that. They even speak to the issue of, they speak to a whole array of social issues that have no relevancy to what the primary responsibility of a school is. So, of course, they throw that out. There's no explanation. They're trying to capture the support of that constituency. But make no bones about it. Davis wants more members. That means more dues. That means more political clout. They want less accountability. There's nothing in that contract about adding a minute to the school day, adding a minute to the school year, closing schools and consolidating schools that are near empty. Manly High School last year had less than 100 students and something like 25 faculty. This whole community school, this whole sustainable community school model is all about maintaining a certain staffing level regardless of the school's enrollment. So this is just where she ultimately wants to end up is with more membership, more dues, less accountability, and less choice. Because in their contract, they also want to, in effect, phase out and eradicate charter schools. And as you know, they want to shut down the magnet schools, and they're even complaining about dual enrollment programs and programs that allow students to attend college while they're in high school and earn dual credit. They want to eliminate any competition because it impacts their membership.
My kids took part in that. They went to Truman while they're still at Amundsen, and that helped.
Remember, this school district that's spending almost $30,000 per student. $30,000 per student. There's been a dramatic increase in funding per student. I think only New York, among the large urban districts, pays more. Of course, the state of Illinois pays on the average 20 to 50% more per student than the surrounding states. Yet I think we're near last when it comes to Midwest and the surrounding states in academic performance. So while they're systematically asking for more, they're delivering less and less. Look at the abysmal test scores. You realize that in Chicago, only 11% of black students are meeting state standards in reading, and 6% are meeting state standards in math. No wonder they're demonizing testing and calling it racist. They're spending $30,000 a kid, and they're getting those type of abysmal results. When the test scores are that low, that constitutes systems failure. Yet they destroyed the scholarship program that allows poor families to send their kids to parochial and private schools. And now they're trying to destroy charter schools, and which are public schools, by the way, of which 96% of the 54,000 students who attend those public charter schools are black and Latino students, and 87% are come from low income families. I mean, you want to talk about racism? That's one can strongly argue that the denial of school choice, the lowering of standards, is in fact blatantly racist.
Yeah, that's something you and Dan Proft can agree upon. But also, I think they're getting a little greedy, Paul, because they want a 9% pay hike, and the national average right now is 3.8%. So do you think Brandon, because he's such good friends with Stacey Davis Gates, I mean, I hear they talk every day, multiple times, and people always tell me, oh, she's always on the 5th floor. She's really in charge. Do you think that he'll cave to her, every demand?
Yeah, I think they're starting out high. I think between you and I, they already know where they want to settle on the salary side. Okay. And whatever it is, I guarantee this: it'll be a healthy increase. It'll exceed the rate of inflation. Number one. Number two, the contract agreement will involve them increasing staffing levels. Do you realize that today the Chicago Public Schools has one employee for every 7.5 students and one teacher for every 15 students? With those type of numbers, like, where are they? And despite spending $30,000 a student, only 54% of that money finds its way into the local schools. How's that money being spent? No talk about decentralizing the central office. No talk about increasing the autonomy of principals and their locally elected school councils. So at the end of the day, she's going to get a higher salary that's going to exceed the salary increases that you've seen the other unions negotiate. She's going to get more staff. They're going to get no accountability. They're going to continue to strangle public school, even public school choice, and they are going to make it almost impossible to hold students in schools accountable for poor academic performance. That's what they want. That's what they'll get, and that's what he will deliver to them.
It was so goofy yesterday, too. I don't know if you saw it. So they had this press conference, and then they all got on a trolley and rode by J.B. Pritzker's downtown office. But before they jumped on the trolley, Paul, this is what she said is going to happen by the end of this contract.
By the end of the contract that we're on right now, we'll have a social worker in every school. By the end of this contract, we'll have a nurse in every school. Those were things that we fought for in 2019.
I mean, I don't disagree. I would like to have a social worker in every school, and I'd like to have a nurse. And personally, we'd like to have an athletic trainer, but that's, not going to happen. Do you think that they'll get that?
Amy, let me respond by that you can easily have a nurse serving two schools, particularly schools that are very small. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the social worker, why isn't there a social worker? When they're spending $30,000 a kid, but only 54% of the money that the school district gets actually finds its way into local schools, if they start anywhere, they should start at doing a forensic audit of the entire and an operational audit of the entire school board, and make a determination on why so much money is being diverted. And even when you take pensions funding out and debt service, it's like $24,000 a student. I mean, imagine that for a second. look at that number in contrast to what the parochial and private schools are paying for their children, and yet having much greater success with the same demographic. So at the end of the day, why aren't you having that now? It's the same thing with this community schools process. Let me tell you the danger of this so-called sustainable community schools. First of all, why aren't all schools sustainable community schools? Why aren't all schools open through the dinner or on weekends over the summer and inviting community-based organizations that have legitimate programs to come in? That's not what they're talking about. Their sustainable community school model is about giving money to sustain staffing levels at local schools that are near empty or that are losing enrollment. And it's also about allowing the teachers to co-manage the school and then to determine how the additional money is going to be allocated, who to contract out with, who to interact with, not the local school councils that have parent representation. No, they want to give the schools money and then let them use a good part of that additional money to help strengthen and expand the Chicago Teachers Union's local alliances. So this is a very expensive political document. It's just more evidence that the Chicago Teachers Union has really become a political party, if not the political party, and they're doing it to the detriment of the students.
You're right, and the union's gone on strike twice in the last 12 years. Do you think that's going to happen this time? I mean, this contract expires June 30th.
Oh, no, she's going to get what she wants. Look, he already gave her, $271 million. He gave her $226 million in surplus revenues, and, without asking for a concession in return. And then they decided to pick up the city decided to pay for their pension share into their non-teacher employee return. Okay. They just did it. They just the city just picked that up as if the city has an additional $46 million to spend. So at the end of the day, she's going to get everything she wants. I also want to make one other point too. You talk about the strike. They threatened to strike 3 times, and as you know, because I did plenty of morning shows with you from time I'm even co-hosting about the shutting down of schools, and they closed schools for 77 consecutive weeks. And with devastating consequences, not only academically, but also social, emotionally, and devastating consequences when it comes to violence. Since the 2019 shutdown, there's been a 50% increase in murders of school-age youth, and 8 to 9% of the murders and shootings, the arrests for murder and shootings, are school-age youth 17 years and younger. The one thing they have in common is 90% of them are not in school. If you take out the historic increases in violent crime among school-age youth, both involving school-age youth either as victims or victimizers, there's been virtually no spike in crime. So the crime pandemic that has swept the nation overwhelmingly in the so-called blue cities has been the direct result of the teacher unions across the state shutting down the public school system for 77 consecutive weeks. The parochial schools, incidentally, had no loss of academic performance. They met or exceeded their expectations. The charter schools, of course, in Chicago were also forced to shut down, but charter schools nationally elsewhere that were able to reopen and early on were able to have hybrid, I mean, they also had minimal academic loss. But this is just more of the same. This is the union asking for more and offering less. And I see that the present teacher union leadership as a clear and present danger to the academic, to the economic future of the students that they're serving.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul Vallas. Miss you. And I'm still licking my wounds that you're not the mayor, but it's okay. I'm watching Rome burn along with the rest of us. Policy advisor now at IllinoisPolicy.org. You can see some of his work there, and obviously former candidate for mayor and former CEO of CPS. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day. then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Support our police and hire the police to personally protect you. You've watched the news. Rising crime has been affecting our everyday lives in Illinois more and more these days. Blue Star Security can protect you, your business, or your place of worship. Blue Star Security is the only security company in Chicago with over 900 off-duty police officers, all W-2 employees.
I'm Jeffrey Salvetti, Vice President of Blue Star Security and a 15-year law enforcement veteran. The Blue Star team is made up of over 900 state-certified active and retired law enforcement professionals. We serve businesses and private organizations with supply chain and special event security, and also protect our loved ones at places of worship and schools all across the Chicagoland area. Blue Star Security's technology allows mobilization of off-duty officers quickly and efficiently. Our primary mission is to provide unparalleled protective services for each assignment with integrity while maintaining our commitment to community service in the Chicagoland